The sword entered Kael Veyron's chest so cleanly that for one absurd second he felt no pain. He only felt surprise. Then the blade twisted. Blood flooded his throat. Kael staggered backward across the shattered marble floor of the Imperial ballroom. One hand clamped around the steel buried beneath his ribs. Around him, chandeliers burned like artificial stars while hundreds of nobles watched in frozen silence. Standing at the other end of the sword was the hero of this world. Lucian Arclight, golden hair, silver armor, the sacred crest of the sun god blazing across his chest. The same handsome face that had appeared on every illustration Kael remembered from the novel. And behind Lucian stood the woman Kael had supposedly tried to steal. Seraphina Valcrest, the heroine, the Saintess of Moonlight. The woman whose kidnapping was supposed to become the final crime that justified Kael Veyron's execution. Lucian stared at him with righteous fury. Kael almost laughed, because he remembered this scene. He remembered every damned word. 3 months ago, Kael had been an ordinary man from Earth who stayed awake until sunrise reading a fantasy novel called The Sword Saint Who Devoured the Heavens. Then he fell asleep. When he opened his eyes again, he was Kael Veyron, the spoiled second son of a disgraced duke. A side character, not a villain, not even an important antagonist. Kael existed for exactly one purpose. He was supposed to provoke Lucian, obsess over Seraphina, cooperate with the demon cult, and die at the hero's hands during the Imperial Founding Festival. His death happened in Chapter 47. The novel had more than 800 chapters. Kael had reincarnated into a character who could not even survive long enough to see 10% of the story. So from the moment he awakened in this world, he had done everything possible to escape the original plot. He avoided Seraphina. He refused invitations from corrupt nobles. He burned every letter sent by the demon cult. He sold half his luxury possessions and secretly prepared enough money to flee the empire. He even treated Lucian politely whenever they met. It changed nothing. The story dragged him toward his execution anyway, and now the hero's sword was inside his heart, exactly as written. Lucian pulled the blade free. Kael collapsed. His knees struck marble. The nobles finally erupted into whispers. Murderer, traitor, monster. Kael barely heard them. His vision darkened. Seraphina stepped forward. For the first time, Kael noticed something strange. She was not looking at Lucian. She was looking at him. Her violet eyes were trembling, not with hatred. With horror, her lips moved. Kael could not hear the words. Then darkness swallowed him, and Kael Veyron died exactly when the story demanded. Except death rejected him. Kael's eyes snapped open. He inhaled so violently that his lungs burned. Sunlight spilled through crimson curtains. A silver mirror stood opposite his enormous bed. Kael stared into it. Black hair, pale skin, gray eyes, no wound, no blood. He threw himself toward the calendar on the bedside table. The date made his fingers tremble. March 3rd, 1 year before his death. Kael remained motionless for several seconds. Then laughter escaped his throat. It started quietly. Soon he was laughing so hard that the servants outside his room probably thought their young master had finally gone insane. Perhaps he had. Because this time Kael understood something he had failed to understand during his first life. Avoiding the plot was useless. This world wanted a hero. It wanted a heroine. It wanted villains. And most importantly, it wanted Kael Veyron dead. Fine. If destiny refused to let him leave the story, he would stop running from it. He would rob it. Kael crossed the room and pulled a thick leather notebook from beneath his desk. During his previous life, he had written everything he remembered from the novel. Characters, treasures, hidden dungeons, secret bloodlines, future disasters, and abilities. His finger stopped on one name. Abyssal Crown. Kael's smile vanished. This was the power that transformed Lucian from an exceptionally talented swordsman into an existence capable of eventually slaughtering gods. The title was misleading. The Abyssal Crown was neither an artifact nor a spell. It was a primordial authority hidden inside the corpse of an ancient being beneath Blackthorn Academy. In the original novel, Lucian discovered it accidentally during his first semester. The power allowed its owner to consume fragments of abilities from defeated enemies and evolve them without theoretical limit. At first, Lucian could steal only tiny portions of physical traits. Later, he consumed magical affinities, then skills, then bloodlines, then authorities. By the end of the novel, even divine laws became food. Kael slowly closed the notebook. Lucian would enter Blackthorn Academy in 5 months. Kael could reach the hidden chamber tomorrow. The strongest power belonging to the hero had never actually belonged to him yet, which meant Kael wasn't stealing anything. He was simply arriving first. But that alone would not save him. Cal opened the notebook again. His eyes moved to another name, Seraphina Valcrest, the heroine. In his first life, Kael had avoided her, because approaching her was one of the major triggers behind his death. That had been a mistake. Seraphina was not merely Lucian's future lover. She was one of the central pillars supporting his rise. Her moonlight blessing healed wounds, purified curses, strengthened souls, and eventually evolved into an ability capable of reversing death itself. More importantly, Seraphina possessed information that even she did not initially understand. Her family knew the location of the 7 celestial seals. Lucian needed her. The plot needed her beside him. Kael stared at her name. Then he remembered the expression on Seraphina's face as he died. Horror, regret, and something else. Something that had never been described in the novel. Kael picked up his coat. If the world insisted that Seraphina belonged to the hero, then the world was about to learn a painful lesson. People were not property, and destiny was not ownership. 3 hours later, Kael stood outside Valcrest Cathedral. Rain had begun falling over the capital. According to the novel, Seraphina would spend this morning secretly healing commoners in the cathedral's eastern clinic. This was one of the earliest demonstrations of her kindness. It was also where Lucian was supposed to meet her for the first time 6 months later. Kael entered. The clinic smelled of medicine and wet stone. Priests moved between rows of beds, then he saw her. Seraphina was kneeling beside a coughing child. Silver hair fell over her shoulders. Her violet eyes glowed softly while pale moonlight gathered between her palms. Kael stopped. The novel's illustrations had failed her. She was beautiful, certainly, but beauty was not what struck him. It was exhaustion. Darkness rested beneath her eyes. Her fingers trembled slightly after finishing the healing spell. The novel had described Seraphina as infinitely compassionate. It had never bothered mentioning that compassion hurt. A priest noticed Kael's expensive clothes and hurried toward him. Before the man could announce his identity, Kael raised one finger. Seraphina finished healing the child. Only then did she turn. Their eyes met. Her expression changed instantly, fear. Kael felt his stomach tighten. That was wrong. They had never met before. Not in this timeline. Seraphina stood so abruptly that the stool behind her toppled. Kael froze. She knew him. The priests looked between them. Kael dismissed them with a glance and approached slowly. Lady Seraphina. Her face had gone white. You died. Those 2 words changed everything. Kael stared at her. Rain struck the cathedral windows. Finally, Kael spoke. It was a gamble. Seraphina's reaction confirmed it. Her breath caught. Kael suddenly understood. He was not the only person who had returned. Seraphina seized his wrist and dragged him through a side door. They entered an empty prayer chamber. She locked it. Then she turned toward him. How much do you remember? Enough. That isn't an answer. Neither was telling me I died. Her eyes hardened. This Seraphina was different from the gentle saintess described at the beginning of the novel. Of course she was. If she had returned too, then somewhere behind those violet eyes lived years of memories. Kael decided to test her. Imperial Founding Festival. Seraphina flinched. Lucian killed you, after supposedly rescuing you from me. Her face twisted. You never kidnapped me. Kael said nothing. Seraphina's hands curled into fists. I discovered the truth too late. The room suddenly felt colder. What truth? The letters presented at your trial were forged. The witnesses were paid. The carriage supposedly used to abduct me belonged to someone else. Kael's pulse quickened. None of this had appeared in the novel. Who? Seraphina looked directly into his eyes. Lucian's. Kael almost dismissed the accusation as impossible. Then he remembered something. The novel had been written almost entirely from Lucian's perspective. Readers saw what Lucian saw. They believed what Lucian believed. Or perhaps what Lucian wanted them to believe. Seraphina continued. After your death, changed how? He stopped pretending. Kael's skin prickled. Seraphina walked toward the stained glass window. In the beginning, I thought Lucian was everything the Empire claimed. Brave, honorable, chosen by heaven. He defeated demons and protected cities. People worshipped him. Her voice became quieter. Then people around him started disappearing. Kael listened. Nobles who opposed him. Priests who questioned him. Adventurers possessing rare abilities. Abyssal Crown. Kael understood immediately. Seraphina turned back. He was consuming them. So she had discovered Lucian's secret. What happened to you? I confronted him. A bitter smile appeared on her lips. He killed me. Kael's expression hardened. When? 7 years after you died. 7 years. Seraphina had lived 7 years beyond Kael's first death. That meant she knew events he had only read about. But something still didn't make sense. In the original sequence of events, you loved him. Seraphina stared at him strangely. Original sequence, Kael realized his mistake. She remembered her previous life. She did not know this world had been a novel. He couldn't explain that yet. Instead, he corrected himself. Before everything went wrong, Seraphina's expression darkened. I thought I loved him. Kael waited. Now I know I love the person he wanted me to see. That answer was enough. Kael walked toward the door. Seraphina caught his sleeve. Where are you going? To steal something. What? The reason Lucian becomes unstoppable. Her eyes widened. Kael opened the door. If you really remember 7 years, then you know what happens if he gets it. Seraphina hesitated. Then something changed in her expression. Fear became determination. I'm coming now. You don't know where the entrance is. Kael looked back. I do. You don't know how to open the third seal. His hand stopped on the door. That was not in the novel. Seraphina folded her arms. You need moonlight. Kael stared at her. For the first time since reincarnating, Kael smiled sincerely. Fine. They left the capital before sunset. Blackthorn Academy occupied an enormous mountain fortress several hours north of the city. Classes would not begin for months, which meant most of the outer grounds were nearly deserted. Kael and Seraphina entered through an abandoned aqueduct beneath the western wall. The deeper they traveled, the older the architecture became. Academy stone gave way to black rock. Black rock gave way to something resembling fossilized bone. Eventually, they reached a circular door covered in ancient runes. Kael touched the center. Nothing happened. Seraphina stepped beside him. Blood. I know. Kael cut his palm. Blood struck the door. The first seal opened. The second required mana. Kael poured nearly half his reserves into the runes. The stone trembled. The second seal opened. Then came the third. In the novel, Lucian had opened it accidentally, because moonlight reflected through a crystal during a dungeon collapse. Kael had never understood the mechanism. Seraphina raised her hand. Silver light flowed from her fingertips. The third seal shattered. A staircase appeared. Darkness waited below. They descended. The pressure increased with every step. Kael's instincts screamed at him to turn around. Something ancient was sleeping beneath them. Something that did not want visitors. They finally entered an enormous cavern. At its center stood a throne. A corpse sat upon it. The creature had 6 arms and a crown fused directly into its skull. Black mist leaked from its empty eye sockets. Seraphina stopped breathing. Kael knew this creature, the nameless devourer, an entity that had existed before the current gods. Lucian would eventually absorb a fragment of its authority. But Kael had forgotten one important detail. In the novel, when Lucian entered this chamber, the corpse was dead. Now one of its eyes opened. Kael felt his soul freeze. A voice entered his mind, not through his ears, directly. It asked why someone so insignificant desired the authority of devouring. Kael couldn't move. The pressure forced him to his knees. Seraphina collapsed beside him. The corpse rose, its 6 hands unfolded. Kael felt the creature examining every memory buried inside him. His first life Earth, the novel. His reincarnation. His return. Then the entity laughed. The cavern shook. Kael's nose began bleeding. The ancient being seemed delighted. It had discovered something impossible. Kael was not supposed to exist like this. His soul came from beyond the boundaries governing this world. The laws controlling destiny could influence his body. They could arrange coincidences around him. They could even push events toward predetermined outcomes. But his soul remained foreign, unregistered. An anomaly. The entity extended one skeletal finger. Blackness gathered at its tip. Seraphina screamed Kael's name. The finger touched his forehead. Pain exploded. Kael saw stars collapse. He saw worlds consumed. He saw creatures older than gods devouring one another in an endless darkness. Then something entered him. Not mana, hunger. Infinite hunger. Black markings spread across his arms. His heartbeat stopped, then restarted once. Twice, each beat shook the cavern. The corpse began disintegrating. Its crown cracked. Black fragments flew toward Kael and sank into his chest. A voice colder than death echoed through his consciousness. The authority had chosen a successor. Kael understood its first law instinctively: defeat. Cavolve. The Abyssal Crown was his. But the power felt different from what he remembered. Lucian had obtained only a fragment. Kael had inherited the source. Seraphina stared at him. Kael. He opened his eyes. For a moment they were completely black. Then they returned to gray. I'm fine. You were dead for almost a minute. I've had practice. She almost slapped him. The cavern suddenly trembled. Kael looked upward. Footsteps. Someone was descending the staircase. Impossible. Nobody should know this place existed. Seraphina extinguished her light. They moved behind the throne. The footsteps grew louder. One person entered the cavern. Kael slowly looked around the edge of the ancient throne. Golden hair. Travel armor sword hanging at his waist. Kael's blood turned cold. Lucian Arclight. 5 months before he was supposed to arrive at Blackthorn Academy. Lucian walked directly toward the empty throne. His expression changed when he saw the disintegrated corpse. No, the word escaped him like a growl. Kael's mind raced. This was impossible unless... Lucian punched the throne. No, I came earlier this time. Kael stopped breathing. This time. Beside him, Seraphina's face went pale. Lucian was also a regressor. 3 people had returned, but Lucian clearly believed he was the only one. He stared at the remains of the nameless devourer. Who took it? Black energy suddenly flickered across Kael's hand. Lucian's head snapped toward the throne. Kael cursed silently. The hero drew his sword. Come out, Kael stepped from hiding. For several seconds, Lucian simply stared. Then his face transformed. Confusion, recognition, and finally hatred. Kael Veyron. Kael smiled. Lucian Seraphina emerged beside him. That broke something inside the hero. Lucian stared at her as if reality itself had betrayed him. Seraphina? She did not answer. His gaze dropped to the black markings on Kael's hand. Lucian understood. The color drained from his face. You took my crown. Kael almost laughed. There it was. The entitled, not surprised that Kael had discovered the power. Not curiosity, ownership. Lucian believed destiny itself belonged to him. Kael stepped forward. It was never yours. Lucian's mana exploded. Golden light filled the cavern. The pressure cracked the floor. Even without the Abyssal Crown, Lucian was terrifying. He had regressed with years of combat experience. Kael possessed a divine authority but had no idea how to use it. Lucian disappeared. Kael barely saw the sword. Steel crossed Kael's throat. Or it should have. Kael moved instinctively. His hand caught Lucian's wrist. The impact shattered 3 bones in Kael's fingers. Pain shot through his arm, but something inside him awakened. Hunger. The Abyssal Crown reacted to Lucian's mana. Kael felt dozens of possibilities. Strength, speed, swordsmanship, mana control, and something buried deeper. A power Lucian already possessed before ever obtaining the crown. Kael understood why Lucian had become the chosen hero in the first place. The man carried a legendary blessing, heavenly adaptation. Every battle permanently improved his ability to understand and counter whatever threatened him. Combined with the Abyssal Crown, it had created a monster without limits. Kael smiled through the pain. Lucian saw that smile. For the first time, fear entered the hero's eyes. Kael tightened his broken fingers around Lucian's wrist. The crown opened its mouth, not physically, spiritually. Lucian screamed. Golden light poured from his body. The cavern shook. Kael felt something being ripped free. Lucian tried to pull away, too late. A brilliant fragment emerged from his chest. Kael consumed it. Knowledge exploded through his nervous system. His muscles adjusted. His perception sharpened. His mana pathways changed. He understood Lucian's stance, his breathing, his sword angle. His next attack, heavenly adaptation, had been stolen. Not copied. Stolen. Lucian looked inside himself and realized the blessing was gone. His expression became indescribable. Kael released him. Lucian stumbled backward. The hero who had once taken everything from him stared at his empty hands. Kael flexed his broken fingers. Already the new blessing was studying the injury, adapting. Improving. Seraphina stared at Kael. Lucian stared at Kael. And deep inside the Abyssal Crown, something ancient laughed. Kael had entered this chamber intending to steal the hero's strongest future power. Instead, he had stolen the power and the blessing that made the hero worthy of wielding it. But then Lucian began laughing, quietly, brokenly. He wiped blood from his mouth and raised his head. You still don't understand. Kael's smile disappeared. Lucian's eyes burned with hatred. You think I killed you because of Seraphina? Silence filled the cavern. Lucian pointed his sword at Kael. I killed you because in every timeline I've lived through, there is only one person the gods are truly afraid of. His sword shifted. Not toward Kael, toward Seraphina, and it was never me. Seraphina smiled. It was her. Then the entire mountain began to collapse. The ceiling came down first. A slab of black stone the size of a mansion tore free from the cavern roof and plunged toward Seraphina. Kael moved before thought could form. He slammed into her, throwing both of them behind the ancient throne as the stone crashed where they had been standing. The impact detonated through the chamber. Dust swallowed everything. Lucian disappeared behind a wall of debris. Move. Kael grabbed Seraphina's hand and ran. The staircase was collapsing. Behind them, pillars cracked apart while enormous sections of the underground temple vanished into darkness. Kael's newly stolen heavenly adaptation screamed information into his mind. Vibrations, angles, falling trajectories, structural weaknesses. His body began learning the rhythm of the collapse. A rock fell toward his skull. Kael shifted half a step. It missed him by an inch. Another blocked the staircase. Kael kicked against the wall, twisted in midair, and landed beyond it. He nearly laughed. Minutes ago, that movement would have been impossible. Heavenly adaptation was already changing him. But Seraphina was slower. The floor split beneath her. Kael caught her wrist. For one terrible second, she dangled over an abyss. Below them, darkness stretched farther than the eye could see. Seraphina looked up. "Let go." Kael stared at her. "What?" "The entire platform is breaking." Cracks spread beneath his boots. She was right. He smiled. "Then climb faster." He pulled. Muscles tore in his shoulder. The Abyssal Crown reacted instantly. Hunger surged through his veins. Kael felt residual energy trapped inside the ancient stones around him. Tiny fragments, meaningless individually. But the crown did not care. It consumed. Black mist streamed from the walls into Kael's body. Strength flooded his arm. He dragged Seraphina upward just as the platform collapsed. They crashed against the remaining staircase. Seraphina landed on top of him. For half a second, neither moved. Then Kael heard another crack. Romantic moment later. "What romantic?" Kael rolled aside. A boulder smashed into the exact spot where his head had been. They ran again. Behind them came an explosion of golden mana. He was alive. Of course he was. The hero burst through the rubble like an enraged beast. His elegant swordsmanship was gone. There was nothing heroic about his expression now. Kael didn't look back. He's upset. "You stole his blessing. He started it. You stole something attached to his soul. He stabbed me first. In our previous life, I hold grudges." Despite everything, Seraphina laughed. One short, breathless sound. Lucian heard it. His expression became murderous. Golden sword energy sliced through the corridor. Kael shoved Seraphina down. The attack passed above them and carved through 6 stone pillars. The tunnel groaned. Kael looked back. "Are you insane?" Lucian raised his sword again. "You don't leave this mountain." The second strike came faster. Kael extended his hand instinctively. The Abyssal Crown pulsed. Black energy gathered around his fingers. The golden slash hit. Pain exploded through Kael's arm. He was thrown backward. But the attack did not pass through him. Black mist wrapped around the golden mana. Consumed it, only a fraction, but enough. Kael felt foreign knowledge entering his mind. Radiant sword aura, a technique belonging to the Arclight bloodline. The crown analyzed it, broke it apart, fed it into heavenly adaptation. Kael's eyes narrowed. So this was the real reason the combination was monstrous. The crown provided material. Heavenly adaptation transformed that material into understanding. Lucian had spent years learning how to combine them. Kael had stolen both. Lucian realized the same thing. His next attack stopped halfway. For the first time, rage gave way to calculation. He knew every technique used against Kael could become food. Kael asked. Lucian's jaw tightened. Then the mountain answered for him. The entire corridor tilted. Stone collapsed between them. Kael lost sight of Lucian. "Go!" He and Seraphina sprinted upward. They reached the aqueduct seconds before the underground temple completely collapsed. Cold night air struck Kael's face. They stumbled out of the mountain and rolled down a muddy slope. Behind them, half the western courtyard of Blackthorn Academy sank several feet. Then silence. Kael lay on his back beneath the rain. Every bone hurt. His right hand was swollen. His shoulder was torn. His mana reserves were almost empty. He began laughing. Seraphina stared at him. "You really are insane. We won. We almost died. Lucian is still alive." Kael's laughter stopped. Unfortunately, Seraphina sat beside him. Rain ran through her silver hair. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then she asked the question that had been hanging between them. What did he mean? Kael looked at her. "When he said the gods were afraid of me." "I don't know. You're lying. I genuinely don't." She studied his face. Kael pushed himself upright. "What do you remember about your death?" Seraphina became still. "Lucian killed me beneath the Temple of Dawn." "Why?" "I confronted him." "That's why he wanted you dead. Not why the gods feared you." Her gaze shifted toward the mountain. Kael continued. "Lucian said every timeline." Seraphina nodded slowly, meaning this isn't his second life. Exactly. The implications were horrifying. Kael had assumed Lucian had returned once. But what if Lucian had experienced this world repeatedly? 2 lives? 10? 100? How many times had Kael died without remembering? How many times had Seraphina? And why had they suddenly retained their memories now? Seraphina whispered, "We need information." Kael looked at the academy. No, she frowned. No? We need power, Kael. Information doesn't matter if Lucian can walk into the room and kill us. He stood. His legs nearly failed. Seraphina caught him. Kael steadied himself. 5 months until Blackthorn Academy officially opens. In the previous timeline, Lucian spent those months collecting opportunities. How do you know? Kael ignored the dangerous part of that question. Because there are treasures hidden all across the Empire. Seraphina stared. How many? Kael smiled. 3 days later, House Veyron experienced its first crisis. Kael's father threw a chair at him. You spent how much? Duke Alaric Veyron stood behind his desk, face purple with rage. Kael calmly stepped around the broken chair. Technically, I haven't spent it yet. You withdrew 30,000 imperial gold. I prefer to call it liquidating stagnant capital. You bought 14 horses. Fast horses. Good camping equipment. 300 healing potions. Those were overpriced. The Duke slammed both palms against his desk. And why is the Saintess sleeping in our eastern guest wing? Kael paused. That one is complicated. His father's eyes twitched. The Veyron family was wealthy, but its political position had been declining for years. Kael's older brother, Darius, was supposed to inherit everything. Kael was considered useless, spoiled, arrogant. A permanent embarrassment. In the original story, his father eventually disowned him shortly before his death. Kael had spent his first life desperately trying to repair that relationship. This time he didn't care. He placed a document on the desk. I need access to the northern estate. His father's anger disappeared. No, father. No, there's something beneath it, I know. Kael froze. That was unexpected. Duke Veyron walked toward the window. The northern estate has been forbidden since before you were born. Why? Because your mother died there. Kael's thoughts stopped. His mother, Elena Veyron. The novel barely mentioned her. She died when Kael was an infant. His father refused to discuss her. Even Darius knew almost nothing. Kael had always assumed her death was irrelevant background. But hidden beneath the northern Veyron estate was one of the 7 calamity weapons, the Ashen Heart. An artifact that granted immunity to ordinary fire and allowed its wielder to absorb heat. Lucian discovered it in Chapter 93 after House Veyron had already fallen. Kael had intended to take it first. Now his father was telling him Elena had died in the exact location where it was hidden. Coincidence? Kael no longer believed in coincidences. How did mother die? His father remained silent. Father, leave. Kael didn't move. The Duke turned. For the first time, Kael saw something beneath his father's usual anger, fear. You will never go to that estate. Kael stared at him. Why? Because she made me promise. Mother, the Duke's face tightened. She said if either of my sons ever started asking about the northern estate, I was to stop them. A chill crawled down Kael's spine. When did she say that? The night before she died. Kael's voice became quiet. I was an infant. Yes, I couldn't ask anything, I know. Then how could she predict this? His father said nothing. Kael understood. His mother had known the future. Another regressor? No. Something else was happening. That night, Kael broke into his father's study. Seraphina stood guard. You realize stealing from your own family is still stealing. Kael searched through the Duke's locked cabinet. I prefer inheritance with accelerated delivery. That's not how inheritance works. It is if you're creative. He found a false bottom. Inside lay several letters. Most were written by his mother. Kael unfolded the oldest. Elena's handwriting was elegant. The letter was addressed to Duke Alaric. Kael read. His expression slowly changed. Seraphina noticed. What? He handed her the letter. She read it. Her face went pale. Elena had written about dreams. Not ordinary dreams. She dreamed of worlds repeating. A golden swordsman standing atop mountains of corpses. A silver-haired woman dying beneath a white temple. And a black-haired child devouring the sun. Kael. His mother had seen him, before he could even walk. Another letter described voices. Entities speaking from beyond the stars. They called Lucian the anchor. Seraphina the key and Kael the mouth. Seraphina lowered the page. The mouth? I've been called worse. This isn't funny. No, it really isn't. Kael opened another letter. This one contained a map of the northern estate. At its center was a symbol, a black circle surrounded by 7 flames, the Ashen Heart. But beneath it, Elena had written something else. Do not let Kael touch the heart before the crown awakens. Kael stared at the sentence. His mother knew about the Abyssal Crown. Seraphina whispered, she knew exactly what you would become. Kael folded the letter. Then we're going north. Your father explicitly forbade that. My father also throws furniture when he's emotional. Kael. The letter says not before the crown awakens. He raised his hand. Black markings appeared across his skin. It awakened. Seraphina sighed. When do we leave tonight? What? Kael smiled. You didn't even argue properly. I've known you for 4 days and already learned that arguing only wastes travel time. They departed before midnight. The northern estate stood deep inside the frostwood. Snow covered the forest, even though spring had already reached the rest of the empire. The closer they came, the warmer Kael's chest became. The crown sensed something. Hunger stirred. They reached the manor at dawn. It had been abandoned for nearly 20 years. Windows shattered. Vines consumed the walls. The front doors hung crookedly from rusted hinges. Kael entered. Dust covered everything. Portraits lined the hallway. He stopped before one, Kael Veyron. His mother had black hair like his gray eyes, a gentle smile. Beside her stood Duke Alaric, younger and happier than Kael had ever seen him. Kael felt something uncomfortable in his chest. He turned away. The map led them underground. Beneath the wine cellar, they found a hidden staircase. Heat increased with every step. Soon snow melted from their boots. At the bottom waited a stone chamber. The ashen heart floated at its center. It resembled a burning human heart carved from black crystal. Flames surrounded it. Seraphina raised a protective barrier. Careful, approached. The crown reacted violently. Hunger nearly overwhelmed him. He reached toward the artifact, then stopped. Something was wrong. The ashen heart was supposed to be a weapon, but he could hear a heartbeat. Slow, heavy, alive. Kael touched it. The world vanished. He stood in darkness. A woman waited ahead. Gray eyes. Kael couldn't breathe. She smiled sadly. My son. His legs refused to move. This wasn't a memory. Somehow she was looking directly at him. You took longer than I hoped, Kael swallowed. Mother, only an echo. She approached. I left this fragment because I knew eventually you would return. Return from where? Death. Kael's blood chilled. She touched his face. You've already died more times than you remember. Images exploded around him. Kael saw himself as a child, dead from fever. The world reset. He saw himself at 16, killed in a carriage accident. Reset at 19, poisoned, reset. At 22, executed, reset again. Again, hundreds of deaths. Different circumstances. Kael staggered. No, Elena's echo watched sadly. The world keeps killing you because it cannot control you. Why don't I remember? Because the anchor remembers for everyone. Lucian. Kael understood. Every reset strengthened Lucian's knowledge while everyone else returned ignorant. A perfect hero. A man allowed infinite attempts at victory. Why do I remember this time? Because the anchor made a mistake. Whatna smiled. He killed the key. Seraphina. Lucian had killed her 7 years after Kael's death. By doing so, he damaged whatever mechanism controlled the reset. That was why Seraphina remembered. That was why Kael remembered. Perhaps that was also why the Abyssal Crown had been whole instead of fragmented. The gods, Kael whispered, are not gods. Elena's expression hardened. They are custodians. This world. Why? Because something is imprisoned here. Kael looked at the ashen heart. What? His mother's echo stepped backward. You. Silence. Kael felt as though the ground had disappeared. Elena continued. The soul you believe came from another world did not arrive here accidentally. Earth, his previous life. Were they false? No. Elena seemed to read his expression. Your other life was real, but it was not your beginning. She touched his chest. You existed before this world. The Abyssal Crown pulsed. The nameless devourer recognized you because it once served you. Kael's mouth went dry. The crown wasn't Lucian's power. No, it wasn't even the corpse's, no. Elena smiled. It was yours. The darkness trembled. Her image began fading. Kael stepped forward. Wait, you don't have much time. Tell me how to stop Lucian. You misunderstand. Her expression became terrified. Lucian isn't your greatest enemy. Then who is? The thing using him. The darkness cracked. Light poured through. Elena shouted one final warning. Never consume all 7 calamities. The vision shattered. Kael woke on the chamber floor. Seraphina was kneeling over him. Kael. He inhaled. The ashen heart floated above his chest, then plunged into him. Fire erupted. Seraphina was thrown backward. Kael screamed. Flames consumed his body, but his skin did not burn. The Abyssal Crown opened. Instead of devouring the artifact completely, it fused with it. Heat became blood. Fire became breath. Kael felt a second heartbeat form beside his own. Then the flames vanished. He stood. Seraphina stared. What happened? Kael looked at his hands. Everything just became worse. Before he could explain, applause echoed through the chamber. Slow. Mocking. Someone stood at the top of the staircase. Not Lucian. A tall man wearing white priestly robes descended toward them. Kael recognized him immediately, High Cardinal Malrek, one of the most respected men in the Empire. In the novel, Malrek had been Lucian's mentor, the man who taught him divine swordsmanship, the man who eventually sacrificed himself protecting Lucian from the Demon Emperor, at least. That was what readers had been told. Malrek smiled. Elena always was troublesome. Kael's blood went cold. You knew my mother. I killed your mother. Seraphina summoned moonlight instantly. Kael's flames erupted around his fists. Malrek did not even flinch. Instead, he looked delighted. The crown and the first calamity. Wonderful. Kael's eyes narrowed. You wanted me to take them. Of course, why? Malrek spread his arms. Because locks are useless until someone gathers the keys. Kael remembered Elena's warning. Never consume all 7 calamities. His stomach tightened. The 7 weapons weren't treasures. They were seals. And Lucian's repeated journeys collecting them had never been about becoming stronger. Someone had been guiding him, preparing him. Malrek smiled wider. Lucian failed us many times. He was too sentimental, too obsessed with Seraphina, too desperate to remain the hero. Footsteps echoed above. Another person entered Lucian. His armor was cracked from the mountain collapse. Blood covered one side of his face. Yet when he saw Malrek, the hatred in his expression vanished. It became fear. Don't listen to him, Kael stared. Lucian stepped down. Kael, whatever you think of me, listen carefully. Malrek sighed. Still rebelling? Lucian ignored him. His eyes remained fixed on Kael. I didn't come back this time to kill you. Kael's flames intensified. You have an unusual way of demonstrating friendship. I came back to stop you. From surviving, from becoming what you were. The chamber went silent. Lucian lowered his sword, and then to Kael's shock, the hero dropped to one knee. Malrek's smile disappeared. Lucian looked directly at Kael. I remember the first timeline. His voice trembled. The one before the gods started resetting everything. Kael's second heart beat faster, Lucian continued. In that world, I wasn't the hero he swallowed you were. Kael said nothing. And I wasn't the one who killed you. Lucian looked toward Malrek. The cardinal's expression became empty. Lucian rose. The moment Kael died, the thing beneath this world woke up. Seraphina whispered, What thing? Lucian looked at her. The reason the gods keep resetting time. He turned back to Kael. You want to know why they fear Seraphina? Kael waited. Because she's the only person who can kill you permanently. Seraphina's moonlight flickered. Kael felt cold despite the fire inside him. Malrek began laughing. Lucian raised his sword. Run! Kael didn't move, Lucian shouted. Run! Malrek snapped his fingers. The ceiling vanished. Not broke. Vanished. Above them was no longer the abandoned manor. There was no forest, no sky, only an enormous golden eye staring down from beyond reality. Kael's crown screamed. The ashen heart stopped beating. Seraphina collapsed. Lucian drove his sword into the floor and fought to remain standing. Malrek knelt. Not toward Kael. Toward the eye, his voice filled with worship. The first seal has returned to its master. The golden eye focused on Kael. And for the first time since stealing the Abyssal Crown, Kael felt something inside his ancient power that he had never expected. Fear. The golden eye did not blink. It simply watched. Kael had faced death twice that he could consciously remember. He had felt Lucian's sword enter his chest. He had felt the nameless devourer probe his soul. Neither sensation came close to this. The eye did not radiate murderous intent. Murderous intent would have been easier. This thing looked at Kael the way a craftsman looked at a broken tool. Not hatred, disappointment. The Abyssal Crown trembled inside him. The ashen heart refused to beat. And somewhere beneath his ribs, a memory that did not belong to his current life, whispered one command. Hide. Malrek bowed until his forehead touched stone. Great Custodian, Lucian moved first. He grabbed Kael by the shoulder and shoved him toward the shattered passage. Go! Golden light erupted from Lucian's sword. He swung upward. The attack tore through the chamber and struck the impossible eye. Nothing happened. The blade of light vanished the moment it touched the surface. Malrek laughed. Still pretending to be useful? Lucian snarled. At least I'm pretending to be human. Malrek's smile thinned. Kael did not run. Lucian looked back. What are you doing? Kael stared at the eye, learning. That was what heavenly adaptation demanded. Observe, understand, survive. The power had once belonged to Lucian, but now it belonged to Kael, and for the first time since stealing it, Kael understood that adaptation was not limited to swordsmanship. It was studying the pressure crushing his soul, studying the way the eye existed, studying the absence around it. The thing was not physically above the manor. The ceiling had not vanished. Reality had been folded. They were looking through a wound, a window. Kael's eyes narrowed, which meant it could be closed. Seraphina. She was still on one knee, one hand pressed against her chest. Yes, can your moonlight affect space? She looked at him as if he had gone mad. Not normally. Normally is becoming irrelevant. Malrek rose, the key should not resist. Silver chains burst from the floor. They wrapped around Seraphina's wrists. She screamed. Kael moved. Fire exploded beneath his feet. The ashen heart finally resumed beating, one thunderous pulse. Heat surged through him. Kael crossed the chamber in an instant and punched the nearest chain. Flame struck divine silver. The chain did not melt. The crown awakened hunger. Kael seized the chain with both hands. Black mist crawled over his fingers. He consumed. Not the chain, the authority inside it. Something entered his mind. Binding, restriction, ownership. The concepts tasted poisonous. Kael tore the chain apart. Malrek's expression changed. But Kael saw it. Surprise. Good. He ripped the second chain free. Seraphina stumbled toward him. The golden eye contracted. Pressure multiplied. Kael dropped to one knee. Blood ran from his nose. Lucian was driven flat against the floor. Malrek remained standing. Do you understand now, Kael? Kael spat blood. That your god has poor manners? That resistance is meaningless. Malrek walked closer. For thousands of cycles, this world has repeated itself. Kael's thoughts sharpened. Thousands. Lucian had said he remembered multiple timelines. But perhaps even Lucian did not remember them all. Malrek continued. Empires rise to emerge. Heroes are born. Civilizations collapse, the sequence changes, but the function remains. What function? Containment. The word echoed. Kael felt something cold move through his spine. Malrek looked at him almost tenderly. You are not a prisoner in this world. He smiled. You are the prison. Seraphina's face went pale. Lucian cursed. Kael remained silent. Malrek gestured toward the abyssal markings on Kael's arms. Your original existence could not be destroyed. So the custodians did something more elegant. They broke me apart. Malrek's eyes gleamed. Kael remembered Elena's warning, the crown, the 7 calamities, his forgotten identity, pieces. Not weapons, not treasures. Malrek nodded. They divided your authority into sealed components. They embedded those components into this world. Then they created cycles around them. Lucian forced himself onto one knee. Shut up. Malrek ignored him. Each cycle produces an anchor capable of guiding events toward containment. His gaze shifted to Lucian. A hero, Lucian's hands tightened. Each cycle also produces a key capable of terminating the vessel if containment fails. He looked toward Seraphina, a saint. Seraphina's moonlight flickered. Then Malrek looked back at Kael. And each cycle produces you. His smile returned. The broken god who believes he is human. Silence. Kael should have felt horror. Instead, he felt anger. Not because Malrek called him a god, because everyone else seemed to know more about his life than he did. So Earth, Malrek tilted his head. What about it? My life there. Real how? Containment requires distance. Kael understood slowly. His soul had been pushed outside the system, into another world, raised there, allowed to form a human identity, then brought back. Why? Malrek answered without being asked. To weaken you. The anger deepened. A creature who remembers infinity is difficult to control. A man who remembers rent, bad coffees, and reading fiction is much easier. Kael's blood turned cold. The novel. He remembered staying awake reading The Sword Saint, who devoured the heavens. The world he was currently standing inside. That meant someone had placed knowledge of this world on Earth. Prepared him. Kael laughed softly. Malrek frowned. What amuses you? You people are terrible at containment. What, you gave me a manual? Lucian stared. Seraphina blinked. Kael smiled wider. You sent me to another world, then somehow let a story about this world exist there. For the first time, Malrek looked uncertain. That uncertainty told Kael everything. The custodians had not written the novel. Someone else had. Someone wanted Kael to remember enough when he returned, an ally. Or another manipulator. Either way, the board was larger than Malrek believed. Kael rose despite the pressure. His legs trembled. Heavenly adaptation adjusted. His breathing changed. His mana circulated differently. The pressure became marginally easier to endure. The golden eye narrowed again. Kael smiled at it. You don't like that. The eye focused harder. Pain ripped through his skull. Images exploded across Kael's mind. Cities burning. Oceans boiling. Stars collapsing into mouths of darkness. He saw a figure. Not himself. Something wearing his shape, black hair. Gray eyes, a crown made of endless night. 7 burning hearts orbiting its body. Worlds vanished when it opened its hand. Kael staggered. Was that what he had been? A destroyer? A monster? Then another memory appeared. The same figure stood before a radiant army. Behind him were countless refugees, humans, elves, creatures Kael could not name. The black-crowned being was protecting them. The radiant army attacked first. The vision vanished. Kael understood the trick. The custodian was showing him selected memories, trying to define him through fear. You want me to believe I deserved this? The eye remained silent. Kael wiped blood from his mouth. Maybe I did. Seraphina stared at him. Lucian looked alarmed. Kael continued. But I don't remember. His flames rose. So I'll judge myself after I get my memories back. Malrek's face hardened. There will be no recovery. Kael looked at Seraphina. Can you create a moonlight barrier around the wound? She followed his gaze. The opening? Yes, I can try do it. Malrek lifted one hand. No, Lucian intercepted him. Their blades collided. Golden light exploded. Malrek slid backward. His expression finally showed irritation. You disappoint me more every cycle. Lucian attacked again. This cycle is mutual. Their swords became blurs. Kael had seen Lucian fight before. During the mountain collapse, Lucian had been furious, uncontrolled. Now he fought with terrifying precision. Even without heavenly adaptation, he still possessed centuries of accumulated experience. Malrek was worse. The cardinal moved like someone who had watched every technique Lucian ever learned, because he probably had. Each attack was countered before it began. Lucian took a cut across the shoulder, then another across the ribs. Seraphina! She raised both hands. Moonlight burst outward. The chamber darkened. A silver sphere formed around the tear in reality. The golden eyes shifted toward her. The pressure changed. Kael felt opportunity. Seraphina stared at him. That's your plan? Part of it. What is the rest? Bad. He ran toward Malrek. The cardinal saw him approaching. A divine spear formed in his hand, predictable. He threw it. Kael did not dodge. The spear entered his abdomen. Seraphina screamed. Lucian's eyes widened. Malrek smiled. Then Kael grabbed the spear. Black mist erupted. Consume. Pain became information. Divine energy flooded the crown, binding authority. Spatial resonance. Fragments of the custodian's own power. Malrek's smile vanished. Kael pulled himself farther down the spear. Blood poured from his wound. You wanted me to gather the pieces. Malrek stepped backward. Kael kept coming. So you forgot something. What? The crown eats everything. Kael seized Malrek's wrist. The Abyssal Crown opened completely. For 1 second, the entire chamber went black. Malrek screamed. Not from physical pain, from loss. White light ripped from his body. Kael saw memories, thousands of resets. Malrek standing beside different heroes, different empires, different names. He never aged. He was not human. He was an avatar, a vessel created by the custodian. Kael consumed deeper. Malrek panicked. No, Kael saw the 7 calamities. The ashen heart, the frozen eye, the storm lung, the bone star, the hollow tongue, the iron dream, the crimson fragments. 7 seals. Each contained a piece of Kael's original authority. But Elena had been wrong in one way, or perhaps deliberately incomplete. Consuming all 7 would not simply free Kael. It would free something attached to him, a parasite, a second presence buried inside his original soul. The custodians had not imprisoned Kael alone. They had imprisoned Kael because he was containing something worse. Kael ripped his hand away. Malrek collapsed. The stolen memories burned. Kael understood he really was the prison, not metaphorically. His original existence had swallowed an entity capable of consuming entire realities. He had contained it inside himself. The custodians feared that if Kael regained full power, the entity would escape. But instead of trusting him, they had broken him apart. And every cycle weakened the containment. Idiots. Kael laughed. Lucian stared. Why are you laughing? Because the gods are stupid. Malrek crawled backward. You don't understand. I understand enough. Kael looked toward the golden eye. You've been resetting the world to keep the prison stable. The eye contracted, but the resets are damaging it. Lucian's expression changed. He understood. Kael continued. Every time Lucian gathers the calamities, every time you force the cycle toward the same pattern, you strain the seals. Malrek shook his head. No, you didn't know. I serve the custodian. Kael smiled. You're an employee. Malrek's face twisted. You dare. Kael kicked him across the chamber. Malrek crashed through a pillar. Seraphina almost laughed despite herself. The golden eye reacted. The wound in reality widened. Seraphina's barrier cracked. Kael. He looked up. Time was over. Lucian. The hero turned. Can your radiant sword aura overload divine structures? Lucian looked at the spatial tear. Yes, good. You stole some of it. Not enough, Lucian understood. He raised his sword. Golden light gathered. Kael moved beside him. Black mist wrapped around his arm. The fragment of radiant sword aura he had consumed earlier responded. He copied Lucian's stance. Heavenly adaptation corrected his posture instantly. Lucian glanced at him. You learn quickly. I stole a good teacher. Lucian almost smiled, almost Seraphina shouted. The barrier is breaking. Kael and Lucian attacked together. Gold and black collided. The energies should have annihilated each other. Instead, Kael's crown consumed the edge of Lucian's attack and adapted. The two techniques fused. A black-gold blade of energy erupted upward. It struck the silver barrier. Seraphina understood immediately. She collapsed the barrier inward. The spatial wound folded. The golden eye widened. For the first time, Kael felt emotion from it. Alarm. The black-gold slash hit the center. Reality snapped shut. The eye disappeared. The pressure vanished. Silence crashed into the chamber. Everyone breathed. Then Malrek began laughing. He was lying against the broken pillar. Blood covered his white robes. Kael walked toward him. Something funny? Malrek looked up. You think closing one window matters? Probably not. The custodian knows where you are now. Good. Good, Kael crouched. I have questions. Malrek smiled through bloody teeth. You won't live long enough to ask them. His body began glowing. Lucian shouted back. Malrek exploded. White fire consumed the chamber. Kael covered Seraphina. The ashen heart reacted. Heat rushed toward him. Instead of burning Kael, the flames spiraled into his chest. He consumed them. Not all. When the light faded, Malrek was gone. Only scorched stone remained. Lucian lowered his sword. Seraphina stepped away from Kael. For several seconds, the three stood in silence. Enemies, allies. Victims, no one seemed certain. Kael broke the silence. How many cycles do you remember? Lucian's face hardened. 17. Seraphina inhaled. Kael watched him carefully. And how many times did you kill me? Lucian did not answer. That was answer enough. Kael's flames flickered. Seraphina stepped between them. Not now. Kael looked at her. He murdered me 17 times, 12. Both turned toward Lucian. He looked exhausted. I killed you in 12. Kael stared. What happened in the other 5? Lucian's expression became distant. In 3, Malrek killed you. He paused. In 1, the Demon Emperor did, and the last? Lucian looked directly at Kael. You killed yourself. Silence. Kael's jaw tightened. Why? Because you remembered. The ashen heart beat once heavy. Lucian continued. Enough. Kael waited. You discovered what the 7 calamities were. So I killed myself to prevent the parasite from escaping. Lucian nodded. Kael looked away. That sounded reasonable. Which meant it was probably incomplete. Why did you kill Seraphina in the last cycle? Lucian's expression changed. Pain, real pain. I didn't intend to. Seraphina laughed bitterly. Your sword seemed intentional. Lucian looked at her. I was trying to stop the reset. What? Every cycle ended when one of 3 conditions occurred. He raised one finger. Kael fully awakened a second. Kael died under unstable conditions, a third, or the key activated. Seraphina's face tightened. What does that mean, you? Lucian swallowed. When your full power awakened, you could reset the world manually. Kael frowned. She can control time? Not exactly. Lucian looked towards Seraphina. You can reject an outcome. Her eyes widened. The moonlight blessings. Isn't healing. Lucian shook his head. Healing is only the smallest expression of it. Seraphina stared at her hands. Lucian continued. Your real authority is restoration. Kael understood. She did not heal wounds. She restored bodies toward a previous state. At higher levels, she could restore souls, and eventually entire timelines, the key. Kael looked at Seraphina. You reset us this time. She shook her head. I don't remember doing that. You were dying, Lucian answered. You rejected your death. Seraphina went still. And because you were touching the system when you did it, the reset malfunctioned. Kael's memories returned. Lucian had killed Seraphina beneath the Temple of Dawn. Her death damaged the reset. But perhaps that was not the whole truth. She had triggered it herself. That explained why Kael remembered. Why Lucian retained his memories. Why events had shifted. This cycle was broken. Which meant destiny was no longer operating normally. Kael smiled. Lucian noticed. Why do you look pleased? Because broken systems are easier to rob. Seraphina sighed. Lucian actually laughed. One short sound. Then Kael punched him. His fist connected with Lucian's jaw. Lucian crashed into the floor. Seraphina stared. Kael, he still killed me 12 times. Lucian wiped blood from his mouth. Fair. Kael almost punched him again simply because the acceptance was annoying. Instead, he turned. We need the other calamities. Lucian immediately stood. No. Kael looked back. You're not in charge anymore. If you gather them, you risk freeing the thing inside you. If we leave them scattered, Malrek's replacements will gather them. Lucian hesitated. Kael continued. We don't consume them. Seraphina understood first. We secure them. Exactly. Where? Kael smiled. Somewhere the custodian can't easily reach. And where is that? Kael looked at Seraphina. The Saintess controls access to the moonlit sanctuary. Her eyes widened. You know about that? Kael cursed internally. Too much information again. Seraphina narrowed her eyes. You keep knowing things you shouldn't. We'll discuss my mysterious charm later. No, later, Kael. Lucian looked between them. Then something strange crossed his face. Amusement. Kael noticed. Nothing. Say it. Lucian shook his head. You're exactly the same. Kael's expression hardened. As what? Lucian stopped smiling. The first timeline, the words lingered. Kael wanted to ask. He also didn't. Not yet. They returned to the Veyron manor by evening. Duke Alaric was waiting at the entrance. Kael immediately knew something was wrong. His father's face was pale. 20 armed knights surrounded the courtyard. Darius stood beside him. Cole's older brother was tall, broad-shouldered, and normally composed. Now his hand rested on his sword. What happened? Darius answered. Kael's stomach tightened. What decree? His father held out a parchment. Kael read. By order of the Imperial Throne and Holy Council, Kael Veyron was accused of desecrating sacred ground, abducting Saintess Seraphina Valcrest, attacking hero candidate Lucian Arclight, and murdering High Cardinal Malrek. Kael stared at the final accusation, fast. Far too fast. Malrek had prepared this before confronting them. Below the charges was the punishment. No trial. Kael laughed softly. Duke Alaric did not. This is not funny, I know. Then why are you smiling? Kael lowered the decree. Because he remembered this moment. Not exactly, but close. In his first remembered life, accusations had accumulated slowly. Letters, witnesses, political pressure. By the time he realized what was happening, the entire empire considered him guilty. This time, the trap had been sprung early, too early, before the lies had time to become truth. Kael looked toward the road. Hundreds of torches approached. Imperial soldiers, holy knights, and at their head rode a man in crimson armor. Prince Cassian, the Emperor's second son. In the original novel, Cassian was one of Lucian's greatest allies. A brilliant commander, a ruthless politician, and eventually emperor. Kael smiled wider. You have a plan. Of course, is it terrible? Usually. Seraphina stepped forward. Before you do anything insane, remember that the accusation says you abducted me. Kael looked at her. And I can simply say you didn't. Kael paused. That was annoyingly sensible. Lucian looked away, hiding a smile. Kael frowned. Fine, Seraphina smiled. Fine. Use logic, ruin my fun. The Imperial army entered the courtyard. Prince Cassian dismounted. He removed his helmet. Dark red hair fell around a handsome face. His eyes moved across Kael, then Seraphina, then Lucian. His expression became complicated. Saintess Seraphina stepped forward. I was not abducted. Cassian blinked. The soldiers behind him shifted. Seraphina continued. Kael Veyron did not harm me. He protected me. The prince looked at Lucian. Hero candidate? Lucian sighed. He also did not attack me without cause. Kael raised an eyebrow. Technically true. Cassian looked deeply annoyed. And Cardinal Malrek? The courtyard fell silent. Kael stepped forward. He tried to kill us. The prince stared at him. High Cardinal Malrek? Yes, the man who served the Empire for 40 years? Apparently he had hobbies. Cassian's jaw tightened. Kael handed him one of Elena's letters. Not the important one. A carefully selected page describing Malrek's visits to the northern estate before Elena's death. Cassian read. His expression changed. This proves nothing. Kael nodded. But it gives you a reason not to arrest me immediately. The prince looked up. Why would I want that? Kael smiled. Because tomorrow morning the eastern border fortress falls. Silence. Cassian's eyes sharpened. What? Kael remembered the event. Chapter 52. The first major military disaster of the novel. The fortress of Redhaven would be attacked by the Bloodfang horde. Thousands would die. Lucian had arrived afterward and become famous for leading the counterattack. But now Kael knew the timeline was unstable. The attack could come earlier or later. He had to gamble. 20,000 beastmen crossed the eastern gorge before dawn. Cassian stared at him. How could you possibly know that? Kael smiled. Arrest me tomorrow if I'm wrong. The prince's expression became dangerous. And if you're right? Kael looked toward Lucian, then Seraphina, then the distant horizon. If I'm right, you give me command of the defense. Seraphina whispered. Kael? Cassian laughed. Not because it was funny, because the request was absurd. You? Me, you've never commanded soldiers, true. You've never fought in a war, also true. Then why would I hand you a fortress? Kael's smile disappeared. Because I know exactly how the enemy plans to destroy it. Cassian studied him. For a long moment no one spoke. Then a horn sounded from outside the estate. A messenger rode through the gates at full speed. His horse was bleeding. The rider nearly fell from the saddle. Your Highness. Cassian turned. The messenger collapsed to one knee. Emergency dispatch from Redhaven. Kael's heartbeat quickened. Too soon, the man shouted. The Cassian's face changed. Enemy numbers? The messenger swallowed. 20,000. Every eye in the courtyard turned toward Kael. He said nothing. The messenger continued. And, Your Highness... Cassian's expression hardened. What? The fortress commander is dead. Kael frowned. That was different. In the novel, Commander Halbrecht survived the first assault. The timeline had changed. The messenger lifted his head. Before he died, he sent one final report. What did it say? The man looked terrified. He said the beastmen were not attacking alone. Kael felt the crown stir. Who is with them? The messenger answered. Lucian's face went pale. Kael looked at him. That reaction meant only one thing. This had happened before. Just not in any timeline, Kael remembered. Lucian whispered. No, Kael's eyes narrowed. What? Lucian looked toward the east. The demon emperor isn't supposed to awaken for another 6 years. A distant roar rolled across the horizon. Even from hundreds of miles away, the sound seemed to shake the sky. Kael's ashen heart began beating violently. The Abyssal Crown opened its hunger. And deep within the eastern darkness, something answered. A voice entered Kael's mind. Ancient, familiar, delighted. At last my king has returned. The voice did not come from the east. It came from inside Kael. That realization frightened him more than the words themselves. My king has returned. The Abyssal Crown pulsed, the ashen heart answered. Kael pressed one hand against his chest. Lucian noticed immediately. What is it? Kael looked at him. You first, Lucian's jaw tightened. Kael. The demon emperor isn't supposed to awaken for 6 years. You knew that without thinking. Prince Cassian looked between them. Would someone explain what is happening? No. Kael and Lucian answered together. Cassian's eye twitched. Seraphina almost smiled. Kael pointed toward Lucian. He knows something. Lucian stared at the road leading east. Then he exhaled. In one of the cycles, the emperor awakened early. Which one? The 9th. Kael folded his arms. And we lost the eastern half of the empire in 11 days. Cassian's expression changed instantly. Impossible. Lucian looked at him. You asked for an explanation. Cassian stepped forward. Redhaven alone has 3 defensive walls. Behind it are Greywatch, Iron Cross, and the Ardent River line. All fell. You expect me to believe that? No. Lucian's face hardened. I expect you to decide whether you want to repeat it. The prince said nothing. Kael watched Lucian carefully. What caused the early awakening? Lucian's gaze shifted toward him. You did, silent. Kael blinked. That's getting repetitive. You found the ashen heart. Kael's stomach tightened. In the 9th cycle, yes. And you absorbed it. Kael looked down at his chest. The second heartbeat thumped. Lucian continued. 3 days later, the demon emperor woke. Seraphina understood first. The calamities are connected. Lucian nodded. Not just to Kael remembered the voice. My king, he asked quietly. Who is the demon emperor? Lucian's expression became grim. I never learned his real name. That's not what I asked. Lucian hesitated. Then he answered. He served you. The courtyard seemed to grow colder. Kael laughed once. Apparently I had employees too. Lucian did not smile. In the oldest records, before the empire existed, there are references to 7 generals who followed a black-crowned sovereign. Kael looked at him. 7, yes. The 7 calamities. No, Lucian shook his head. The calamities were your powers. He looked toward the east. The generals were living beings. Kael's smile vanished. The demon emperor is one of them. I think so. The voice returned. Closer, not words this time. A feeling, recognition, loyalty, and hunger. Kael understood something terrible. The demon emperor could sense the ashen heart, which meant every fragment Kael reclaimed was a beacon. Malrek had not merely wanted him to gather them. Each awakening might also call back pieces of his ancient army. The eastern horizon flashed red. A few seconds later, thunder rolled, too distant to be natural. Cassian immediately turned toward his soldiers. Prepare the fastest horses. Kael grabbed his arm. Not horses. The prince glared at him. Remove your hand. We'll arrive too late. Redhaven is less than a day away. And if Lucian is right, a day is enough to lose 3 fortresses. Cassian's expression became murderous. Then what do you suggest? Kael looked at Seraphina. She understood and sighed. No, Kael smiled. You don't even know what I'm going to say. You have the expression. What expression? The one you make before suggesting something suicidal. Lucian nodded. She learns quickly. Kael ignored him, the moonlit sanctuary. Seraphina's eyes widened. You want to use the sanctuary gates? Cassian frowned. What gates? Seraphina looked irritated. Something he should not know exists, Kael shrugged. The sanctuary maintains ancient moon paths connecting several holy sites, Lucian stared. You knew about those? Kael looked at him. You didn't? That clearly annoyed him. Good, Seraphina crossed her arms. The paths are forbidden. Why, they're unstable. How unstable? Travelers occasionally disappear. Kael considered that. Better than 20,000 beastmen. That is not a reasonable comparison. It is if you're in a hurry, Cassian raised one hand. Enough. Everyone looked at him. The prince's expression was cold and controlled. I don't care how any of you know impossible things. He pointed toward the messenger. Redhaven is under attack now. Then toward Seraphina. If you have a method of reaching the east before dawn, use it. Seraphina stared at him. Cassian continued. I'll take responsibility. That surprised Kael. The prince noticed. What? Nothing. You expected me to argue. You're more practical than the book suggested. Silence. Kael cursed internally again. Cassian narrowed his eyes. What book? Kael smiled, figure of speech. Seraphina covered her face. Lucian looked deeply entertained. They reached the moonlit sanctuary 2 hours later. It stood beneath the capital's oldest cathedral. Even Cassian had not known the chamber existed. A circular pool occupied the center. Its water reflected a night sky despite the stone ceiling above. 7 silver arches surrounded it. Seraphina walked to the eastern arch. Runes glowed beneath her fingertips. This path should lead near the Temple of First Light. Cassian frowned. That's 30 miles from Redhaven. Better than 300. Kael stepped closer. The arch filled with moonlight. A road appeared beyond it, not a physical road. A silver pathway suspended through darkness. Stars moved beneath it. Kael stared. The crown stirred. It recognized this place. That was becoming increasingly annoying. Stay close. Kael smiled. You say that like I'm difficult to supervise. You are impossible to supervise. Lucian entered first. Cassian followed. Kael stepped through beside Seraphina. The world changed. Sound disappeared. There was no wind, no temperature. Only silver light beneath their feet and darkness stretching forever in every direction. Kael looked down. Something enormous moved beneath the path. He stopped. Seraphina immediately grabbed his sleeve. Don't. Did you see that? Yes. What was it? I don't know. Comforting, they continued. Halfway across, the voice returned. This time it spoke clearly. You carry the heart. Kael's steps slowed. Seraphina noticed again. He nodded. Lucian looked back. The Demon Emperor? Kael didn't answer immediately. The voice continued. The old oath remains. Kael's crown reacted. An image entered his mind, a battlefield. Not from the novel. Not from any life he consciously remembered. A younger version of the Demon Emperor knelt before him. He had dark red skin, 4 horns, and eyes like burning coal. Behind him stood armies from dozens of races, not enslaved. United, Kael's ancient self raised one hand. The kneeling general swore something. The memory vanished before Kael could understand the words. He stumbled. Seraphina caught him. What did you see? History. Lucian's expression tightened. Yours maybe. The path trembled. Silver light flickered. Seraphina looked toward the exit. We need to move. They ran. The moon path cracked behind them. Darkness pushed through. Kael felt something following. Not the Demon Emperor. Something else. Something inside the path had noticed the crown. The exit rapidly approached. Lucian crossed first. Cassian followed. Seraphina pushed Kael toward the arch. A black tendril erupted from beneath the road. It wrapped around Kael's ankle. He fell. Seraphina screamed. Kael reached for the silver path. His fingers slipped. The tendril dragged him toward darkness. He saw eyes opening below, hundreds, thousands. The crown surged. Hunger answered hunger. Kael stopped sliding. Black mist erupted from his body. The tendril recoiled. Kael grabbed it. He consumed. A soundless scream tore through the moon path. Knowledge entered him. Fragments. The creatures beneath the path were not monsters. They were discarded possibilities. Timelines. Broken versions of the world erased during resets. Kael saw civilizations that no longer existed. Heroes never born. Seraphinas who died as children. Lucians who became farmers. Kaels who never returned from Earth. Thousands of realities reduced to shadows beneath the active cycle. Rage exploded through him. The custodians had not been resetting one world. They had been throwing entire timelines away. The tendril tore free. Kael crawled toward the exit. Seraphina seized his hand. Lucian grabbed her waist. Cassian pulled Lucian. Together they dragged Kael through. The arch collapsed. They crashed onto temple stone. The moon path vanished. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then Cassian sat up. Kael laughed. Seraphina punched his shoulder. Ow, you almost disappeared. Technically, I learned something. You always say that after nearly dying. Lucian stood. What did you see? Kael's expression changed. Later. He walked toward the temple doors. Cassian followed. Outside, the eastern sky was red. Not sunrise fire. The Temple of First Light stood on a hill overlooking the Redhaven Valley. The fortress was visible in the distance. Or what remained of it. The first wall was gone. The second burned. Beastmen swarmed through the breach. Behind them marched demons. Thousands. Black banners moved through the smoke. At their center walked something enormous. A figure at least 12 feet tall, 4 horns, dark red skin, coal-black armor. Kael recognized him from the memory, the Demon Emperor. But Lucian stared with confusion. That's not the one I fought. Kael looked at him. What? The Demon Emperor in my cycles looked human. The giant stopped. Even from miles away, his head turned, directly toward Kael. The battlefield seemed to freeze. The demons stopped. The beastmen stopped. Then the giant fell to one knee. Every demon followed. Thousands of soldiers knelt. Cassian's face emptied. Lucian whispered something profane. Seraphina slowly looked at Kael. He sighed. I have a feeling this will be difficult to explain. The Demon Emperor's voice thundered across the valley. Not hostile. Reverent, my king. Every Imperial soldier on the remaining walls turned toward Kael's hill. Cassian stared at him. Your king? Kael rubbed his forehead. I only met him in a memory. Lucian drew his sword. Don't approach. Kael ignored him. He walked down the hill. Seraphina grabbed his arm. Kael, if he wanted me dead, he had an army available. That's not reassuring. It's mildly reassuring. Lucian stepped in front of him. You don't know what he wants. Neither do you. I fought a Demon Emperor before, not this one. Lucian's expression darkened. Kael continued walking. The giant rose. He approached alone. Each step cracked stone. When he reached Kael, he removed his helmet. His face was terrifying, scarred, ancient. But his eyes filled with something Kael did not expect. Relief. The giant knelt again. My name is Varkath, Kael remembered. Not from the novel. From somewhere deeper. General of the Ash Legion. Varkath's eyes widened. You remember a little. The demon's expression almost broke. Kael felt uncomfortable. Why did you attack Redhaven? Varkath looked confused. We did not. Kael turned toward the burning fortress. You appear to be participating. Varkath's jaw tightened. We came because the heart awakened. He pointed toward the battlefield. The beastmen attacked before our arrival. Cassian stepped forward. My scouts reported demons fighting beside them. Varkath looked at him. Your scouts are dead. Cassian's face hardened. What sent that report was not human. Kael felt cold. Malrek, or another avatar. The custodian had manipulated both sides. Then why are your soldiers inside the battlefield? Because something beneath Redhaven woke. Lucian's face changed. What? Varkath stood. He looked at Kael. Another fragment of you. Kael's second heart beat violently. No. Varkath nodded. The Crimson Shadow, one of the 7 calamities. Kael cursed. The custodian had placed a fragment beneath a major fortress. Perfect bait. War would expose it eventually, Varkath continued. But someone reached it before us. Who? A scream echoed from Redhaven, not human. The fortress exploded. The remaining walls blasted outward. Thousands of soldiers were thrown into the air. Smoke rose. At the center stood a figure, white robes. Golden light. Kael's stomach dropped. Malrek. Impossible. He had watched Malrek destroy his own body. Then Kael remembered. Not human. A vessel. Malrek smiled from across the battlefield. His voice carried unnaturally. You closed one window. Another Malrek appeared beside him. Then another. Then 10. Then 50 white-robed figures emerged from the smoke. Identical faces. Identical smiles. I never knew there were multiple. Kael looked at him. Your mentor had backups. Malrek raised one hand. The ground beneath Redhaven cracked. Red light poured upward. Kael's crown screamed. The Crimson Shadow awakened. But it did not fly toward Kael. It entered Malrek. Every avatar screamed simultaneously. Their bodies dissolved into white light. The central Malrek absorbed them. His body changed. Black veins crawled across his face. Red shadows gathered around him. He looked at Kael. One fragment for the prisoner. His smile widened. One fragment for the jailer. Varkath roared. The demon army charged. Malrek lifted one finger. Every shadow on the battlefield moved. Imperial soldiers screamed as their own shadows rose and wrapped around their throats. Beastmen collapsed. Demons were dragged into darkness. Cassian drew his sword. How do we stop that? Kael stared at Malrek. Heavenly adaptation was already analyzing. Shadow manipulation, divine authority, fragment resonance. The problem was obvious. Malrek now possessed part of Kael, which meant the crown wanted it. Desperately, hunger surged. Kael clenched his fists. Elena's warning echoed. Never consume all 7 calamities. But he only had one. Taking a second would not free the parasite, probably. Seraphina saw his expression. No, Kael looked at her. I didn't say anything. You don't need to. Lucian stepped beside her. She's right. Kael, stop agreeing. Varkath looked between them. The crimson shadow belongs to you, apparently. Then reclaim it. Seraphina turned. Absolutely not. Varkath stared at her. Kael almost laughed. The ancient demon general who commanded thousands looked genuinely confused by a young woman's tone. Seraphina stepped in front of Kael. We do not know what happens if he absorbs more fragments. Varkath answered immediately. He becomes himself. That is exactly the problem. The demon's expression changed. You fear him. Seraphina looked at Kael. No, that answer came too quickly to be a lie. I fear what was buried inside him. Varkath became still. Who told you? Kael narrowed his eyes. You know, Varkath slowly stood. His relief vanished. What have the custodians done? Kael stared. You didn't know? No, the demon's fists trembled. My king swallowed the devourer to save creation. Kael stopped breathing, the nameless devourer. The corpse beneath Blackthorn. The creature whose crown he had taken. But if Kael had swallowed the devourer long ago, then what had been sitting on that throne? Varkath answered the unspoken question. A husk. Kael's blood chilled. The crown, your chain. Kael looked at the black markings on his arms. The Abyssal Crown was not his ancient power. It was the mechanism he had created to control the thing inside him. A leash, a prison lock, and Kael had just fused it back into himself. Varkath looked toward Malrek. The custodians are not trying to keep the devourer imprisoned. Lucian whispered, What? Varkath's expression filled with hatred. They are trying to take control of it. Kael finally understood. The resets, the fragments, Lucian. Seraphina, everything. The custodians had not been maintaining a prison. They had been conducting an experiment, cycle after cycle, trying to reconstruct Kael's power while separating him from the devourer, trying to create a version they could command. Malrek raised both arms. The crimson shadow erupted across the valley. Darkness swallowed the sun. Varkath drew an enormous black sword, King. Kael looked at him. The demon bowed his head. Give the order. Kael stared at the battlefield. Imperial soldiers, beastmen, demons. Everyone was trapped. Everyone was being used. Again, he felt something ancient rise inside him, not hunger. Authority, a memory of commanding armies against impossible gods. Kael raised one hand. Varkath. Kael spoke. Nobody kills the beastmen. Cassian looked surprised. They attacked the fortress. They were manipulated. Then Kael pointed toward Malrek. Break every white-robed bastard you see. Varkath's smile became terrifying. As you command, the demon emperor raised his sword. Thousands of demons roared. Lucian drew his blade. Cassian called his soldiers. Seraphina summoned moonlight. Kael stepped toward the battlefield. Black flame gathered around him. Malrek smiled from inside the storm of shadows. Kael smiled back. No. Malrek's expression shifted. Kael opened the Abyssal Crown. But I will be taking that. Then he disappeared into the darkness. Darkness swallowed Kael whole. The battlefield vanished. Sound vanished. For one impossible heartbeat, there was only the crimson shadow. Not Malrek's version of it. The real thing. Kael felt it stretching beneath every living creature on the field, connected to every fear, every wound, every hidden instinct to survive. The fragment had never simply controlled shadows. That was the crude expression. Its true authority was concealment. Everything that existed cast a shadow. Not only bodies, memories, possibilities. Even gods had things they wanted hidden. Kael landed inside Malrek's darkness and immediately understood why the custodian valued this fragment. The crimson shadow could hide actions from causality itself. A murder committed beneath its full authority could be erased from witnesses. A spell could be cast without leaving magical residue. An entire army could vanish from prophecy. And if pushed far enough, a timeline could be hidden from the beings watching it. Kael smiled. Now that was useful. Malrek's voice echoed from everywhere. You finally understand. Kael walked forward, black mist curled around his arms. I understand why you wanted it, then take it. No. Silence. Kael kept walking. The darkness changed shape around him. His father's, Darius's, Seraphina's, all dead. All accusing him. The crown pulsed. Heavenly adaptation identified the illusion immediately. Kael ignored it. sounded. You distrust power now? I distrust gifts. Wise. Especially gifts from people who repeatedly murder me. The darkness laughed. Then it attacked. A spear emerged from Kael's own shadow. Another appeared. Then 10. Then hundreds. Kael ran. Every step generated new shadows. Every shadow became a weapon. Heavenly adaptation accelerated. One spear missed his cheek. Another grazed his ribs. The next failed by several inches. Kael's movements became smaller, cleaner, more efficient. Within seconds, he was weaving through the storm without wasting a single step. Malrek stopped laughing. Kael smiled. Useful blessing. The darkness tightened. You stole it from an anchor who spent centuries mastering it, and yet he left it lying around. You ripped it from his soul. A blade formed behind Kael. He caught it without looking. Black mist covered his hand. The crown tried to consume. Kael stopped it. Not yet. Instead, he studied the crimson shadow through contact. Information flooded into heavenly adaptation. The fragment resisted. Kael pushed deeper. For an instant, he saw something hidden inside the shadow, a memory. Not his. Malrek's. Thousands of white-robed figures stood around a colossal machine suspended above a dead world. At the machine's center floated a black sphere. Not an eye, not a god. A structure, a consciousness distributed across dimensions. Kael's breath caught. The golden eye had only been an interface. The true custodian was something constructed. Someone had built it. That changed everything. Malrek tore the shadow blade away. The memory vanished. Enough. Kael laughed. You really shouldn't let me touch things. The entire shadow realm collapsed inward. Kael was crushed from all sides. His ribs cracked. The ashen heart detonated. Fire erupted through the darkness. For a moment, red light illuminated the void. Kael saw Malrek. The cardinal stood only 20 feet away. The crimson shadow floated behind him like a vast cloak. Kael attacked. He crossed the distance in a single burst. Malrek raised a hand. Space folded. Kael's fist missed. Malrek appeared behind him. A palm struck Kael's spine. Pain exploded. Kael crashed into the ground. Malrek stepped on his chest. You mistake adaptation for superiority. Kael coughed blood. Didn't say I was superior. You act as though you are. No. Kael looked up. I act like you're predictable. Malrek froze. Fire erupted from beneath him. The ashen heart had been heating the ground since Kael landed. The blast threw Malrek upward. Kael rolled aside. He seized one of the shadows connecting Malrek to the fragment. Then he pulled. Malrek screamed. The crimson shadow stretched. Kael did not consume it. He redirected it. Heavenly adaptation had learned enough. Shadow became passage. Kael stepped through and vanished. Malrek landed. His eyes widened, where Kael emerged behind him. Here his fist struck Malrek's jaw, bones shattered. Malrek spun. Kael entered another shadow, reappeared beside him. Elbow. Knee. A punch. Malrek tried to predict him. Impossible. Kael was not moving through normal space. He was traveling between hidden possibilities. Every shadow became a door. Malrek finally exploded with divine light. The shadow realm tore open. They returned to the battlefield. Kael landed among broken stone. The world had changed while he was inside. Varkath's demons had formed a defensive line around surviving Imperial soldiers. Beastmen were retreating from Malrek's shadow creatures. Cassian stood atop the ruined second wall, shouting commands to both humans and demons, as if commanding monsters was merely another unpleasant administrative duty. Lucian was fighting 3 Malrek avatars simultaneously. Seraphina moved across the battlefield like living moonlight. Everywhere she passed, wounded soldiers rose. Kael watched her restore a demon whose chest had been pierced. The creature stared at her in disbelief. She immediately moved to a human soldier. No distinction, no hesitation. Something about that hit Kael harder than expected. In the novel, Seraphina had been written as Lucian's perfect saint, a beautiful reward waiting beside the hero that had always bothered him. Now he understood why. The story had reduced Lucian into a hero, Seraphina into a heroine, Kael into a disposable villain, Varkath into a demon, Malrek into a wise mentor. Labels, convenient lies. Kael's anger deepened. Malrek emerged from the shadow realm behind him. Half his face was broken. You cannot win. Kael turned. Maybe, the cardinal smiled. The shadow restores me. Kael looked at the fragment. No, Malrek's smile faded. It hides your injuries. Silence. Kael had noticed during their fight. Malrek's wounds were not healing. The crimson shadow was concealing the damaged state and presenting an earlier one. A trick. A powerful one. But not regeneration. Kael pointed towards Seraphina. She actually restores things. Malrek followed his gaze. Seraphina saw them. Kael raised 2 fingers. She understood. Moonlight exploded. A silver wave crossed the battlefield. It struck Malrek. The crimson shadow flickered. For the first time, his broken jaw remained broken. Malrek's eyes widened. Kael attacked. His punch crushed the cardinal's chest. Malrek flew backward. Lucian appeared above him. Golden sword aura descended. Malrek raised shadow barriers. Varkath roared and struck from the opposite side. Black steel shattered the barriers. Lucian's sword pierced Malrek's shoulder. Varkath's blade entered his abdomen. Kael landed in front of him. 3 former enemies, 1 target. Malrek laughed through blood. So this is your grand alliance? Kael grabbed his throat. No, he looked around. Humans. Demons. Saintess. Hero. Prince. People who should have been killing each other, according to the story. This is what happens when everyone realizes you're the problem. Malrek's expression twisted. The crimson shadow surged. Kael felt it preparing to escape. Seraphina. Silver light sealed the ground. Lucian golden aura blocked the sky. Varkath. The demon general drove his sword into Malrek's shadow. The fragment stopped moving. Kael opened the crown. Hunger screamed. The crimson shadow called to him, "Reclaim me." Kael's body shook. Every instinct demanded that he devour it. The moment he touched the fragment, another ancient memory surfaced. Kael standing beneath a dead sun, 7 fragments orbiting him, Varkath kneeling. 6 other generals beside him. Seraphina was there too, not the current Seraphina. Someone who looked exactly like her older, wearing silver armor. And Lucian, someone with Lucian's face. The memory staggered. Malrek saw it. Take it. His voice became gentle. You want your memories. Kael stared at the fragment. Yes. More than power. More than revenge. He wanted the truth. Who had he been? Why did Seraphina and Lucian resemble people from before the cycles? Why had he swallowed the devourer? Who built the custodian? The crimson shadow contained answers. All he had to do was consume it. Seraphina's voice cut through the hunger. Kael, he looked at her. She was covered in blood. Most of it wasn't hers. Her violet eyes remained steady. You don't have to take it. Malrek laughed. She fears what you are. Seraphina ignored him. Kael asked, what if it's the only way to learn the truth? Then we find another way. You don't know that one exists. No, she stepped closer. But I know what happens when people convince themselves they have no choice. Her gaze briefly moved toward Lucian. He looked away. Kael understood. Lucian had probably justified terrible things exactly like that. One necessary death, one necessary reset, one necessary betrayal. Again and again, Kael looked at the crimson shadow. Then smile. Malrek's relief appeared too early. Kael noticed. Of course, the cardinal wanted him to consume it. Elena had warned him. Malrek had practically begged, which meant the correct answer was obvious. Kael closed the crown. The hunger roared in protest. Malrek's expression collapsed. No. Kael grabbed the crimson shadow physically. But instead of pulling it into himself, he turned toward Seraphina. Can the moonlit sanctuary hold this? Her eyes widened. Possibly. Malrek began struggling. No, Kael smiled. Really convincing argument. The cardinal screamed. The fragment must return to you. That's why it won't. Kael pulled. The crimson shadow tore free from Malrek. The cardinal's body instantly collapsed. Every hidden injury returned at once. Broken bones. Destroyed organs. Severed mana pathways. He fell to the ground like an empty robe. The fragment writhed in Kael's hand. It tried to enter him. The crown tried to open. Kael fought both. Blood ran from his nose. His arms trembled. Seraphina placed her hands around his. Moonlight wrapped the shadow. The hunger weakened. Lucian added golden mana. Varkath hesitated, then placed one enormous hand above theirs. Demonic energy joined the seal. 3 forces that should have annihilated one another instead compressed around the fragment. Silver. Gold black, the crimson shadow shrank. Smaller, until it became a dark red crystal no larger than Kael's thumb. Seraphina caught it. Silence spread across the battlefield. Then Kael heard coughing. Malrek was still alive, barely. Kael walked toward him. The cardinal smiled weakly. You think you've won? No. Kael crouched. I think you lost. There are more vessels. I know, more worlds. Good. Malrek's smile flickered. Kael leaned closer. Tell your custodian I'm coming. The cardinal laughed. You cannot reach it. Kael looked toward the sky. That's not what I saw. Malrek froze. Kael's smile widened. I touched your shadow. Real fear. You saw nothing. I saw a machine. Malrek's breathing stopped. Their confirmation, Kael continued softly. I saw where your god lives. Malrek began muttering something. His body glowed. Lucian stepped forward. He's self-destructing again. Kael grabbed Malrek's forehead. The crown opened, just enough, not to consume him. To take one thing. Malrek screamed. Kael searched white corridors, golden symbols. Thousands of vessels, a gate. Coordinates expressed not in distance but causality. Then something struck back. The golden eye opened inside Kael's mind. He was thrown away. Malrek's body exploded. Varketh shielded them. White fire rolled across the ruins. When it faded, nothing remained. Kael lay on the ground. Seraphina ran toward him. Kael. His head felt split open. But he was smiling, Lucian noticed. What did you get? Kael looked at him. A destination. Varketh's expression became grim. The custodian? Eventually. Cassian approached from the fortress. His armor was cracked. He looked around at the impossible collection of survivors. Then at Kael. I left the capital expecting to arrest one troublesome. Kael stood. Bad day? Cassian stared at the demon army. That depends. He pointed toward Varkath. Is he invading the Empire? Varkath answered calmly. No. Cassian nodded. Excellent. Then he pointed at the beastmen. Are they? A massive beastman chieftain approached. He carried an axe but held it lowered. We attacked because white priests told us Redhaven planned to poison our rivers. Cassian closed his eyes. Of course they did. Kael almost liked him. The prince looked at Seraphina. You said the sanctuary can hold the fragment. Yes, secure it. He looked at Lucian. You know more about these cycles than anyone here. Lucian's expression tightened. Cassian continued. You are going to tell us everything. Then he looked at Kael. And you. Kael raised an eyebrow. Cassian pointed at him. No joke. No mysterious half-answers. No pretending you accidentally know secret Imperial locations. Kael frowned. That seems restrictive. Seraphina smiled. I support the prince. Traitor, Lucian laughed. Kael glared at him. You have no voting rights. For the first time since Redhaven began burning, the tension cracked. Then Varketh spoke. King Kael turned. The demon general was looking toward the east. Not at the battlefield. Far beyond it, his expression had changed. What? Varketh slowly drew his sword. The others are waking. Kael's smile vanished. Other generals? How many? Varkath listened to something only he could hear. 3. Lucian cursed. Kael looked at him. You know them? Lucian's face had gone pale. One witch. The Queen of Frost. Kael remembered the second calamity. The Frozen Eye. Lucian continued. In my 6th cycle, she destroyed the northern kingdoms. Varketh shook his head. She would never do that willingly. Lucian looked at him. She did. Varkath's expression darkened. Then someone controlled her. Kael immediately thought of the custodian. Cassian asked. And Varkath answered. The Storm Saint. A distant rumble rolled across the sky. And the Bone Sovereign, the ground trembled. Seraphina tightened her grip around the sealed crimson shadow. Kael looked toward the horizon. 3 ancient generals. 3 possible calamity locations. 3 disasters waking simultaneously, 2 coordinated. The custodian had changed strategy. It was no longer waiting for the story to unfold. Kael had broken the cycle too badly. Now the enemy was accelerating everything. Lucian stepped beside him. This never happened before. Kael smiled without humor. Good, Lucian stared. Good? If the custodian is changing the script, it's afraid. The ashen heart beat. The crown stirred. Kael looked at Seraphina, then Lucian, then Varkath. For the first time, they were no longer reacting to destiny. Destiny was reacting to them. Kael lifted his head. Then we stopped stealing opportunities. Cassian frowned. What does that mean? Kael looked toward the 3 distant disasters awakening across the world. It means we attacked the story itself. Far above them, beyond the clouds, something golden opened its eye. And this time Kael smiled first. The first kingdom fell before sunset. Not to an army, to winter. Kael stood on the ruined walls of Redhaven as a messenger crystal projected an image above Cassian's palm. The northern city of Valeria had disappeared beneath ice, not snow. Ice. An entire city frozen in seconds. Houses. Soldiers, even birds remained suspended in the sky, trapped inside enormous crystals. At the center of the frozen city stood a woman. Blue-white hair reached her waist. A crown of ice floated above her head. Her eyes were closed. Lucian stared at the projection. That's her. Varketh's enormous hand tightened around his sword. Elindra, the Queen of Frost? She was never a queen. Lucian glanced at him. That's what history calls her. History lies. Kael almost laughed. That was becoming the unofficial motto of their group. Varkath pointed toward Elindra. She was keeper of the Northern Gate. She protected those lands before your empire existed. Cassian looked at the frozen city. She's doing an unusual job of protecting them. Because that isn't her will. Kael studied the image. Black lines were visible beneath Elindra's pale skin. The same pattern that had appeared across Malrek after absorbing the crimson shadow, custodian corruption. Lucian nodded. Probably. Kael looked at Seraphina. How long can the crimson shadow remain sealed? Days? Maybe weeks? No. The sealed crystal was already inside the moonlit sanctuary, surrounded by barriers maintained by 20 priests. But Kael knew the custodian would eventually attempt to reclaim it. They needed something permanent. More importantly, they needed to stop 3 awakened generals without killing them. Kael looked at Varkath. You said Alindra served me. Yes. Would she recognize me if she sees you? Lucian immediately understood. No. Kael looked at him. You don't even know the plan. You're going to walk into the frozen city, correct, and hope your face fixes everything. Not everything. Lucian stared. Kael smiled. I'll improvise. Seraphina sighed. There's the expression again. Cassian looked confused. What expression? The suicidal one. Kael ignored them. How quickly can we reach Valeria? Seraphina answered. Using another moon path, perhaps 3 hours. No. Everyone turned toward Varkath. The demon general looked toward the north. Too slow. Why? Alindra's awakening will accelerate. Varkath's face hardened. When the frozen eye fully merges with her, she will stop distinguishing enemies from allies. Lucian nodded grimly. That's what happened in my 6th cycle. Kael looked at him. How did you stop her? Lucian remained silent. Varkath slowly turned. Answer. Lucian met his eyes. I killed her. The temperature seemed to drop. Varkath stepped forward. The ground cracked beneath his boots. You murdered my sister? Lucian drew his sword. She had frozen 3 kingdoms. She was controlled. I didn't know that. Varkath's demonic aura exploded. Kael stepped between them. Enough. Neither moved. Kael looked at Varkath. If you kill him, we lose information. Then at Lucian. If you provoke the 12-foot demon general again, I'm charging admission. Seraphina covered a smile. Varkath eventually lowered his sword. Lucian did the same. Kael continued. Varkath looked at him. How? Same way we beat Malrek. Seraphina frowned. We separate her from the fragment. Exactly. Lucian shook his head. Malrek wanted the crimson shadow inside him. Alindra may be completely fused with the frozen eye. Kael smiled. Then we give it somewhere else to go. Everyone became quiet. Seraphina understood no. Kael sighed again. You want to use yourself as bait. Technically the crown, which is inside you. Minor anatomical inconvenience. Varkath stared at Kael for several seconds. Then something almost nostalgic crossed his face. You truly have returned. Kael frowned. Was I always like this? Worse. Seraphina muttered. Wonderful. They entered the moon path 30 minutes later. Cassian remained at Redhaven to stabilize the border. Varkath brought no army. Only Kael, Seraphina, Lucian, and the demon general crossed north. When they emerged, Kael immediately understood why Valeria had fallen so quickly. The air itself was freezing. His breath became crystals. Seraphina's eyelashes turned white. Lucian's armor groaned as frost spread across it. Only Varkath seemed unaffected. Kael's ashen heart beat. Heat flowed through his veins. The cold retreated from his skin. Then heavenly adaptation began working. Temperature regulation, blood flow, mana circulation. His body adjusted. Seraphina noticed. You're adapting. Yes, she moved closer. Share the heat. Kael looked at her. How? She took his hand. Kael froze for an entirely different reason. Seraphina raised an eyebrow. You defeated Malrek, but holding hands frightens you? No, your face says otherwise. It's cold. I'm the one without a fire heart. Lucian walked past them. Can we save the kingdom before the flirting becomes unbearable? Kael stared at his back. Lucian stopped. For half a second, the old hero seemed to appear. The man who had once believed Seraphina belonged beside him. Then he looked at her. She was still holding Kael's hand. Something painful crossed Lucian's face, but he merely said no. Kael stopped smiling. Lucian continued walking. Seraphina watched him go. He remembers loving me for 17 lives. Kael looked at her. And you? I remember. Do you still love him? Seraphina was silent. Kael regretted asking. Then she squeezed his hand. I don't know who he is anymore. It was not the answer Kael expected, but it was honest. They reached Valeria. The city gates were frozen open. No bodies lay in the streets. That was worse. Everyone remained exactly where they had been when the frost struck. A mother shielding her child. A merchant reaching for a dropped coin. A soldier drawing his sword. Frozen, Seraphina touched the nearest civilian. Moonlight flowed from her palm. Nothing happened. Her face tightened. They're alive. Stared. What? Barely. Varkath's expression changed. Alindra is preserving them. Lucian looked around. Then this is different from my cycle. Because she's fighting the control. They moved faster. The central palace had become a mountain of ice. Alindra stood before it. Her eyes opened when Kael approached. Blue light filled them. The frozen eye floated inside her chest. Kael felt it. Another piece of himself. The crown reacted. Hunger, Alindra stared at Kael. Her lips trembled. My Varketh stepped forward. Sister. Her gaze moved toward him. Recognition appeared, then pain. Run, black veins spread across her face. Ice exploded. Kael shoved Seraphina aside. A glacier erupted beneath them. Lucian cut through it. Varkath charged, she screamed. The sound froze the air. Varkath's arm became encased in ice. He shattered it through brute force. Kael ran toward Alindra. The frozen eye sensed him. Its attention shifted. The crown opened slightly. Come. The fragment answered. Ice cracked across Alindra's chest. She screamed. The frozen eye began pulling free. Then Kael saw golden light beneath it, a seal. The custodian. It had anticipated this. The golden seal tightened. Instead of releasing the fragment, it began tearing Alindra's soul apart. Varkath roared. Stop! Kael closed the crown instantly, too late. Alindra collapsed. Cracks spread across her skin. Seraphina reached her first. Moonlight poured into the dying general. I can't restore her. Why? Something is deleting the damage as it happens. Kael understood. The crimson shadow. Not the fragment they had sealed. The concept. The custodian had learned from Mulrek's defeat. It was hiding Alindra's original state from Seraphina's restoration. Kael grabbed Alindra's arm. Heavenly adaptation searched, layer after layer. Ice, soul, authority. Golden control. Then he found the weakness. The seal was transmitting instructions, which meant it was connected to something. Kael smiled. Found you. Lucian saw his expression. What keep Alindra alive? Kael closed his eyes. Then he consumed the connection. Not the frozen eye, the signal. His consciousness was ripped from his body. He fell upward, past the sky, past stars, past layers of reality. Then he landed inside a white corridor. Mulrek's memory. Kael looked around. Thousands of glass chambers lined the walls. Inside each floated a body, Mulrek, different ages, different faces, different species, vessels. At the end of the corridor stood a golden door. Kael walked toward it. A voice spoke. You should not be here. Kael smiled. People keep telling me that. The corridor distorted, golden spears appeared. Kael dodged. Heavenly adaptation remembered the divine structure from Mulrek's attack. He moved through the barrage. One spear grazed his shoulder. No blood appeared. He had no physical body here. This was consciousness. Interesting. Kael grabbed the next spear. The crown existed here too. Even without flesh, he consumed. The corridor flickered. The custodian spoke again. You endanger all creation, Kael continued walking. Then explain. You cannot be trusted. That's not an explanation. Kael stopped. What? The corridor vanished. A memory replaced it. Kael stood before the same golden machine he had seen through Mulrek. But this time, he was not fighting. He was speaking to it. His ancient self wore the black crown. 7 fragments orbited him. Behind him stood Varkath, Alindra, 5 other generals, and beside him stood the silver-armored woman who resembled Seraphina. Across from him stood the warrior who resembled Lucian. Kael heard his ancient self speak. If I lose control, reset everything. Present Kael stared. No, the custodian answered. You commanded containment. The memory continued. Ancient Kael placed one hand against the golden machine. If the devourer takes me, erase my memories. Divide my authority. Create an anchor to guide the cycles. Kael felt sick. He, not the machine itself. But the reset protocol. The custodian continued showing him. Ancient Kael turned toward the silver-armored woman. And if the anchor fails, the key must kill me. The woman began crying. Kael could not hear her reply. The memory fractured. Present Kael whispered, I ordered this, yes. Then why manipulate the cycles? Silence. Kael looked toward the golden door. Why did Mulrek try to make me gather the fragments? No answer. Why are you controlling Alindra? The corridor began collapsing. Kael smiled bitterly. There it is. The custodian had shown him truth, but only the convenient part. Kael had created the original containment plan. Something changed afterward. Open the door. No. Kael walked forward. Golden chains appeared around him. He consumed one, then another. The crown screamed with pleasure. Stop. Open it. You are not authorized, Kael laughed. I built your protocol. You are no longer recognized as Administrator Prime. Kael stopped. Administrator Prime. Who replaced me? Silence. Kael's expression changed. The golden door opened. Not because the custodian obeyed, because someone stood behind it. A man. He wore black armor. His face was hidden behind a white mask. Kael had never seen him in the novel. But the crown recognized him. Rage exploded through Kael so violently that the corridor shook. The masked man laughed. Kael's voice became cold. Who are you? The man removed his mask. Kael, same black hair. Same gray eyes. Older. Sharper. Another Kael. The man smiled. I'm the version that didn't forget. Then he stabbed Kael through the chest. Kael's consciousness shattered. He woke screaming in Valeria. Seraphina held him. Lucian was shouting. Varketh knelt beside Alindra. Kael's chest had no wound, but he could still feel the blade. What happened? Seraphina asked. Kael struggled to breathe. I found the custodian. Lucian leaned closer. And Kael looked at him. Someone else controls it. Who? Kael said nothing. How did he explain that the enemy had his face? Alindra screamed. The golden seal flared again. Kael turned. No time. He knew the seal now. He knew how it communicated. And more importantly, he knew the authority phrase. Kael placed both hands against Alindra's chest. Golden light burned his skin. He spoke. Administrator Prime override. Everything stopped. Lucian stared. Seraphina stared. Even Varketh looked shocked. The seal trembled. Kael continued. Release subject Alindra from active containment. The golden symbol resisted. Then a voice answered from nowhere. Authorization invalid. Kael smiled. Then why did you answer? He opened the crown. The seal had revealed itself. He consumed its outer layer. Golden light shattered. Varketh roared. Alindra's back arched. The frozen eye tore free. Kael caught it. Hunger exploded. For one dangerous moment, he nearly consumed the fragment. Memories waited inside. Power, truth. His original self. Then Seraphina placed her hand over his Kael. He looked at her. That was enough. He closed the crown. Moonlight wrapped around the frozen eye. Lucian added golden mana. Varketh placed his hand beside theirs. Again, 3 incompatible powers compressed the fragment. The frozen eye became a blue crystal. Seraphina caught it. Alindra collapsed. Varketh caught his sister. The black veins disappeared. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then Alindra breathed. Varkoth's entire body shook. Her eyes opened. They were no longer glowing. She looked at Varketh, then Kael. Tears filled her eyes. My king. Kael crouched apparently. She laughed weakly. Then her expression became terrified. You must not gather the others. We know. She seized his wrist. You don't understand. Kael looked at her. The Storm Saint and Bone Sovereign aren't awakening because of the fragments. What? They're running. Varketh frowned. From what? Alindra looked toward the sky. From him. Kael already knew the other Kael. The man controlling the custodian. Alindra's face went pale. You've seen him. Kael nodded. Who is he? She whispered a name. Null. Varketh recoiled. Seraphina asked, who is Null? Alindra stared at Kael. The part of you that wanted the devourer. Silence. Kael understood slowly. When his ancient self swallowed the devourer, perhaps he had not remained whole. One part resisted. One part wanted its power. The custodian had divided more than Kael's authority. It had divided Kael himself. Null was not a clone. He was a rejected possibility, a version separated during the original containment. And unlike Kael, he remembered everything. Alindra continued. Null corrupted the custodian after your first death. Kael's blood chilled. He has been controlling the resets. Yes. Why? To create a version of you capable of containing every fragment without resisting the devourer. Lucian finally understood. Everyone turned. His face had gone white. The Abyssal Crown, heavenly adaptation, the Calamities. Kael understood too. Lucian had never been intended to remain the hero. He was a prototype, a training vessel. Null had used Lucian across countless cycles to perfect the process of absorbing powers. Then Kael returned. A better vessel, the original. Lucian laughed bitterly. 17 lives. He looked at his hands. I thought I was chosen. Kael stepped toward him. You were. Lucian looked up. By a machine. No. Kael shook his head. Every time you decided what to do, that was you. Lucian stared. Kael knew the words sounded strange coming from the man Lucian had murdered 12 times. But he meant them. Destiny could create circumstances. It could manipulate opportunities. It could lie. Choice still mattered. That was the entire reason Kael hated the story. Because labels tried to replace choices. Hero-villain. Demon. Side character. None of them mattered. What mattered was what they did next. A thunderclap shook Valeria. Alindra looked west. The Storm Saint. Another explosion followed. Closer than before, Varketh helped Alindra stand. Where? The Celestial Spire. Lucian's eyes widened. That's inside the capital. Kael's blood ran cold. Another calamity. Hidden beneath the Imperial capital. Cassian was returning there. So was Kael's family. Seraphina whispered, Null is attacking everyone connected to you. Kael looked south. His father. Darius. The sanctuary holding the Crimson Shadow. All in perfect target. Kael turned toward the moon gate. Can we return immediately? Seraphina nodded. What? She was staring at the frozen eye crystal, then at him. Null knows we're sealing the fragments instead of letting you consume them. Yes, then why send Alindra? Kael stopped. She was right. Null controlled the custodian. He had to know they defeated Malrek. He knew the Crimson Shadow had been sealed. Why repeat the same strategy? Unless, Kael looked at the crystal. Don't touch it. Seraphina froze. Too late. A golden symbol appeared inside the frozen eye. The Kalite exploded. Seraphina screamed. Kael reached for her. She vanished, not teleported. Erased. The frozen eye fell to the ground. Kael stared at the empty space where she had been. No, the crown erupted, Varkith shouted. Lucian grabbed Kael. Wait! Kael threw him aside. Seraphina, no answer. Then the golden symbol inside the crystal projected a message. A white mask appeared. Null's voice followed. You keep stealing things that belong to the hero. Kael's hands trembled. Null laughed. So I stole something from you. The message vanished. The frozen eyes shattered. Kael stood completely still. Lucian slowly rose. Varkith said nothing. Alindra looked terrified. Then Kael lifted his head. His gray eyes had become black, not from the devourer, from rage. For the first time, the Abyssal Crown opened without hunger. It opened because Kael commanded it. Every shadow in Valeria bent toward him. Every flame lowered. The frozen city trembled. Lucian stepped back. Kael looked toward a place beyond the world, toward the white corridors, toward Null. His voice was quiet. You wanted the original me. The crown expanded. A black halo formed behind his head. Memories he had never recovered stirred in the darkness. Varkith dropped to one knee instinctively. Alindra followed. Kael did not notice. He raised one hand. A wound appeared in reality. On the other side waited the golden corridors of the custodian. Lucian stared. Kael, if you go there now. Kael stepped toward the opening. Lucian grabbed his shoulder. Kael looked back. I know. Then don't walk into it. Kael smiled. There was nothing warm in it. Lucian, for once, I'm not trying to survive. The wound widened. Golden alarms screamed from beyond reality. Kael's crown answered. He stepped through. I'm going to steal her back. The golden corridor rejected Kael immediately. Walls bent, floors folded upward. Thousands of white doors slammed shut at once. A voice thundered from every direction. Unauthorized intrusion. Kael kept walking. Black mist rolled from his shoulders. The Abyssal Crown no longer whispered. It obeyed. Every golden chain that reached for him vanished into the crown. Every divine spear dissolved before touching his skin. Heavenly adaptation studied the architecture with terrifying speed. This place was not built like a fortress. It was built like a mind. Corridors were thoughts. Doors were permissions. Vessels were memories waiting for bodies. The deeper Kael moved, the less physical everything became. And somewhere inside this impossible structure, Seraphina was alive. He knew it, not because of hope, because the crown could still feel her. A faint silver presence, distant, hidden. Kael stopped at an intersection. 7 identical corridors extended outward. A normal intruder would have guessed. Kael closed his eyes. Heavenly adaptation. Air did not move here. Sound barely existed, but information did. Every corridor carried traces of authority. One smelled like Malrek, another like Lucian, another like ancient blood. The 4th contained moonlight. Kael opened his eyes. Found you. He moved. Behind him, the wound in reality began closing. Then a golden blade entered before it vanished. Lucian stepped through. Kael stopped. You followed me. Lucian looked around. I assumed your brilliant strategy was entering the enemy's headquarters alone. It was. Then it needed improvement. The wound snapped shut behind him. Kael stared. Now you're trapped too. Lucian shrugged. I've died before. 12 of those times involved me. You're still counting? Always. A roar shook the corridor. Varkith tore through the closing spatial wound with both hands. Reality screamed. The demon general forced himself inside. Then Alindra slipped through behind him. The wound sealed. Kael stared at all 3. This was supposed to be a solo rescue. Varkith drew his sword. Then it was a poor plan. Lucian smiled. I hate teamwork. No, you don't, Lucian said. I specifically hate your version. They moved toward the moonlight trace. The custodian changed tactics. Golden soldiers appeared hundreds, not Malrek vessels. Faceless bodies made from divine metal. Lucian raised his sword. Varkith stepped forward. Kael stopped both. Wait. The constructs charged. Kael opened the crown. Nothing happened. Lucian looked at him. Was that meant to do something? Kael frowned. They're empty, no souls, no authority. The custodian had learned again. It was sending enemies with nothing worth consuming. Heavenly adaptations still analyzed them. Movement, weaknesses. The first construct swung. Kael ducked. He struck the elbow. Metal cracked. The second attacked. Kael used the first as a shield. Lucian entered beside him. Golden sword light flashed. 3 constructs fell. Varkath simply crashed into the formation. The demon general did not fight elegantly. He fought like a siege weapon. Every swing destroyed walls. Alindra froze the ground beneath the constructs. Kael noticed something. They're protecting the ceiling. Lucian glanced upward. Why? Kael smiled. Let's ask. He jumped. Black flame exploded from the ashen heart. His fist struck the ceiling. Stone shattered. Golden mechanisms were exposed. Lines of light ran through them. The constructs immediately changed formation. Everyone turned toward Kael. Important then, Lucian understood. He cut through the nearest support. The corridor flickered. Varkath destroyed another. Alindra froze the entire mechanism. The walls spasmed. For 1 second, Kael saw through them. Beyond the corridor were thousands of overlapping spaces, laboratories, prisons, memory vaults, and one enormous chamber containing a silver sphere. Seraphina. Left. Kael ran. The wall reconstructed. He punched through it, not physically. He used the fragment of binding authority consumed from Malrek. A conceptual crack appeared. Kael stepped through. The others followed. They emerged onto a bridge suspended above an endless golden abyss. Far below floated pieces of destroyed timelines, cities, mountains, oceans, fragments of worlds discarded by the resets. Alindra stopped. Kael's expression darkened. Garbage. Lucian stared down. He understood. Those are cycles, yes. Lucian's face went pale. All of them? More than you remember. For the first time, Lucian looked genuinely broken. 17 lives had already burdened him. Now he was staring at evidence of thousands. Thousands of worlds. Thousands of versions of everyone. Lucian whispered. I thought resets replaced what happened. No. Kael stared into the abyss. They stored the failures here. Varkath growled. Kael nodded. Probably. A voice echoed across the bridge. Not probably. Null appeared at the far end. Black armor. Kael's face. He removed the mask. Definitely. Kael's crown erupted. Lucian grabbed his arm. Null's smile. Look at that. He looked toward Lucian, the hero restraining the villain. Kael's eyes narrowed. Where is she? Null laughed softly. Straight to Seraphina, where you became attached quickly. Kael moved 1 step forward. The bridge cracked under his feet. Null's smile widened. Interesting. What? In the original world, you took centuries to trust her. Kael's heartbeat changed. Not exactly. Null walked closer. She wasn't called Seraphina then. Silver images appeared around him. A battlefield. The woman from Kael's ancient memories. Silver armor. Violet eyes. She stood beside ancient Kael. Her name was Lyra. Seraphina's face. Different name. Different era. Same soul? Kael asked, and Null smiled. Another image appeared. A golden-haired warrior. Lucian's face. He was laughing beside ancient Kael. Lucian stared. Your first anchor. Lucian whispered. First? Null looked at Kael. You did. Kael felt anger building. Why? Because you trusted him. The image shifted. Ancient Kael stood beside Calum before an army. Then another memory. Calum dying in Kael's arms. Kael turning toward Lyra, telling her something. The image vanished. Null smiled. Would you like to remember what you said? No, that answer surprised everyone, even Null. Kael continued. I'll recover my own memories. Null's expression hardened slightly. You keep rejecting gifts. You keep offering poisoned ones. Kael pointed forward. Seraphina. Null still stubborn. The bridge changed. The silver sphere appeared between them. Inside floated Seraphina. Unconscious, golden chains wrapped around her wrists, throat, and chest. Kael moved. Null raised 1 finger. The chains tightened. Kael stopped. Lucian's sword came up. Varkath roared. Alindra's frost spread across the bridge. Null remained calm. 1 more step and restoration collapses. Kael's voice became quiet. What do you want finally? The ashen heart. No. The crown. No heavenly adaptation. No. Null laughed. Then what exactly are you willing to trade? Kael looked at Seraphina. Me silent. Lucian immediately turned. No, Varkath growled. Alindra shook her head. Null stared at Kael. Explain, you want the original vessel. Kael spread his arms. I'm here. Without the fragments, you're incomplete. Still better than Lucian. Lucian grimaced. Kael ignored him. You've spent thousands of cycles trying to create something that can contain the Devourer and obey you. Null's expression changed. Barely, Kael continued. You failed. I perfected the anchor. Then why replace him? Lucian looked toward Null. Null did not answer. Kael smiled. Because Lucian adapts. Heavenly adaptation pulsed inside Kael. You gave him the ability to become better than your instructions. Lucian's eyes widened. Kael understood fully now. Null had not abandoned Lucian because he was weak. He abandoned him because he became unpredictable. Every cycle added experience. Every failure made him harder to control. Eventually, Lucian began rebelling. Null needed the original Kael instead, a vessel powerful enough to hold everything, but stripped of identity. Kael's Earth life had been part of that. Create a normal human, bring him back, make him desperate to survive, then tempt him with stolen power until he reconstructed himself. Null clapped slowly. Kael smiled. So trade. You for her, yes. Lucian grabbed Kael's shoulder. Don't even pretend this is real. Kael looked at him. It is. No. Lucian's expression hardened. You think I don't recognize this? Kael said nothing. Lucian stepped closer. Sacrifice yourself. Convince yourself you're buying time. Assume everyone else will solve the consequences later. Kael stared. Lucian laughed bitterly. I perfected that mistake. Seraphina moved inside the sphere, her eyes opened. Kael. Her voice was weak. Kael's face changed. She looked at him. Then Null, then the chains, and smiled. Null frowned. That terrified Kael more than anything, because he recognized Seraphina's expression. She had a plan, and plans in this group were becoming contagious. Seraphina. Don't, she whispered. You said people aren't property. Kael's stomach dropped. Null looked toward her. Seraphina's violet eyes brightened. So stop negotiating with me like I am. Moonlight exploded. The golden chains tightened, then shattered. Impossible. Seraphina raised both hands. Her body began glowing. Kael realized what she was doing. Restoration. Not on herself, on the prison. She was restoring the golden chamber to a previous state. Before she had been placed inside, the sphere vanished. Seraphina fell. Kael moved. Null moved faster. A black blade appeared. He drove it toward her heart. Lucian intercepted. Steel collided. Lucian was thrown backward. Varkath attacked. Null caught his sword with one hand. Alindra froze Null's legs. He shattered the ice. Seraphina landed in Kael's arms. Hello, Kael stared. You nearly gave me a heart attack. You have two hearts. That is not the point. Null attacked. Kael turned. His fist met Null's. The impact cracked the bridge. Both froze. Different souls. Same ancient authority felt Null trying to enter his crown. Null felt Kael doing the same. They separated. Null smiled. There you are. Kael flexed his hand. Fascinated. Lucian attacked from the side. Null blocked. Varkath struck from behind. Alindra froze the air. Seraphina restored Lucian's injuries while moving. For several seconds, Null was forced backward. Kael watched, analyzed. Null knew every ancient technique, every authority, every structure of the custodian. But he had one weakness. He remembered too much. Kael understood. Null fought like someone who already knew how everyone behaved. Because for thousands of cycles he had. He expected Lucian to attack directly. He expected Varkath to protect Kael. He expected Alindra to control terrain. He expected Seraphina to heal. Predictability had become his greatest weapon. So Kael did something stupid. Lucian flew sideways. Everyone froze. Kael shouted, now. Lucian understood instantly. Mid-flight, he twisted. His sword struck a control pillar Null had left exposed. Golden machinery exploded. Varkath laughed. Alindra froze the broken mechanism. Seraphina restored the bridge beneath Null to its state before construction. The floor vanished. Null dropped. For the first time, surprise crossed his face. Kael grabbed him. They fell together into the abyss. Kael, Seraphina reached out, too late. Kael and Null plunged past discarded worlds. Null laughed, insane. Kael tightened his grip. You know what the difference is between us? Null formed a blade. What? You remember every version of me. Kael opened the crown. I only need to become one you've never seen. Blackness exploded. The crown wrapped around both of them. Null's smile disappeared. You can't consume me. Correct. Kael grinned. But I can steal from you. Heavenly adaptation locked onto Null's authority. Not his power, his access, administrator privilege. Null understood too late. No, Kael tore. Golden symbols ripped from Null's soul. The Kustan screamed. Every corridor shook. Every stored timeline flickered. Kael felt permissions flooding into him. Access. Control memory reset authority. Not complete, but enough. Null stabbed him through the abdomen. Kael laughed through blood. Got it. Then he released him. Null fell deeper into the discarded timelines. Kael turned no ground. No bridge. Only endless abyss. He had not planned this part. Minor problem. A silver light appeared above Seraphina. She had jumped. Kael stared in horror. What are you doing? Rescuing you. That was my job. You're bad at it. She grabbed him. Moonlight surrounded them, but they kept falling. Kael looked downward. Something enormous opened beneath the discarded worlds. A mouth. The Devourer. Its presence. The thing inside Kael was reacting to the abyss. Every destroyed timeline was food. Kael felt the hunger rising. If the Devourer consumed them, he did not know what would happen. Seraphina saw his eyes darken. I know, don't listen to it. I'm trying. The crown shook. The stolen administrator authority activated. A command appeared instinctively in Kael's mind. Return active entities to primary cycle. Kael smiled. Found an X, he used it. Reality inverted. The abyss disappeared. Kael and Seraphina crashed onto the golden bridge. Lucian grabbed them. Varkith dragged everyone backward. Alindra sealed the corridor in ice. The entire custodian complex was collapsing. Alarms screamed. Kael stood. Blood poured from his abdomen. Seraphina restored the wound. Can you open a way home? Kael looked at the stolen authority inside him. Yes, Lucian frowned. Then do it. Kael did not move. Because something else had appeared, a list. Not written in words, felt active cycles. Primary cycles. Emergency reset. And one command beneath them. Kael stared. Lucian noticed. Kael looked at him. Null had retained direct control over the reset system, but Kael now possessed partial administrator access. He could sever Lucian from the anchor function. No more resets through him. No more destiny correcting itself around the hero. No more system forcing Kael toward death. Lucian understood from Kael's "You can free me." Kael nodded. Maybe do it. Seraphina looked between them. What happens? Kael hesitated. Lucian answered. If the anchor is disconnected, this becomes the final silence. No reset. No second chance. Death. Every mistake permanent. Varkith smiled. Alindra nodded. Seraphina looked at Kael. Lucian stepped closer. For once, let the world live with its choices. Kael raised his hand. Administrator authority gathered. He looked at Lucian, the man who killed him 12 times, the hero whose girl he supposedly stole, the man whose strongest power he had actually taken. Enemy. Rival victim. Kael smiled. Try not to die. Lucian laughed. You first. Kael issued the command. Terminate anchor. Golden light erupted from Lucian, he screamed. A symbol appeared above his heart. It cracked, then shattered. Across reality, something changed. Kael felt it instantly. The invisible pressure that had followed him since reincarnation disappeared. No story pulling him toward scenes. No unseen correction pushing people into roles. No destiny. Nothing. The world became terrifyingly quiet, free. The primary cycle destabilized. Emergency protocol initiated. Kael's face spat. Seraphina stared. What? Null's voice thundered from every wall. If I cannot control the final cycle, the golden corridors turned red. Then there will be no final cycle. Kael looked at the administrator commands. Emergency reset had disappeared, replaced by something worse, total timeline deletion. Lucian went pale. He'll erase the world. Kael opened a portal home. Varkith pushed Alindra through. Lucian followed. Seraphina grabbed Kael. Come on. Kael stared at the collapsing custodian. One final command appeared. Manual containment override. Only Administrator Prime could activate it. Kael smiled slowly. Seraphina immediately recognized the expression. No, I haven't said anything. I know. Kael looked at her. If we leave, Null deletes everything. Then we stop him together. We can't from outside. Her grip tightened. Kael, he touched her forehead. For once his smile was gentle. You stole yourself back, she stared. So I'm stealing something too. What? The system. Before Seraphina could react, Kael pushed her through the portal. Her scream vanished as it closed. Kael turned toward the collapsing golden world. Null rose from the abyss below. Broken, bleeding, furious. Kael spread his arms. The Abyssal Crown opened. Administrator authority burned across his soul. You don't have enough access. Kael smiled. Then I'll steal the rest. The entire custodian descended on him, and Kael stepped forward to devour a god. The custodian attacked with everything at once. Golden chains erupted from every wall. White armored constructs poured from fractured corridors. Discarded timelines rose from the abyss like shattered mirrors, each reflecting a different world, a different Kael, a different ending. Null stood at the center of it all, bleeding, smiling. Certain you think consuming the custodian will save them? Kael rolled his shoulders. The wound in his abdomen had closed, but pain still remained. Good. Pain meant he was still himself. I'm not consuming it, Null laughed. You just said you would. I lie when I'm angry. The first chain struck. Kael caught it. The Abyssal Crown opened, but instead of swallowing the authority inside the chain, Kael studied it. Containment protocol. Memory indexing. Causal correction. The custodian was not one power. It was millions of functions layered together. Trying to devour all of it would be suicide, or worse. It would give the devourer enough fuel to awaken completely. So Kael did something the old version of himself had apparently never considered. He stole only what he needed. The chain dissolved. Administrator access flooded into him. Null's smile weakened. Kael pointed at the nearest wall. Disable defensive construct generation. The corridor trembled. Half the white soldiers froze. Null raised his hand. Override. The soldiers moved again. Kael access. For now. Null attacked. Kael barely turned in time. Their fists collided. The impact shattered 3 corridors. They fell through layers of the custodian. One moment Kael saw laboratories. The next oceans from deleted worlds. Then ancient battlefields. Then a room filled with thousands of sleeping Lucians. Kael stared. Null punched him through the chamber. Bodies shattered from their glass containers. None were alive. Prototypes. Failed anchors. Null followed. You think Lucian was special? Kael wiped blood from his mouth. He became special. Sentimental nonsense. Null raised one hand. The dead anchors moved. Hundreds stood. Golden light ignited in empty eyes. Kael's expression hardened. Null smiled. Every version was built for obedience. The corpses attacked. Kael did not. He opened the crown, not toward them, toward the room. He consumed the command linking them to Null. The corpses collapsed. Null's smile disappeared. Kael stepped forward. You keep confusing control with loyalty, he attacked. Null blocked the first punch. The second, the third. He knew Kael's movements. Of course he did. Null possessed ancient Kael's memories. Every stance, every habit, every instinct. So Kael stopped fighting like himself. He copied Lucian radiant footwork. Golden sword posture without a sword. Null's eyes narrowed. Kael shifted again. Varkath, heavy direct. Brutal then Alindra. Circular movement. Then Seraphina. Not combat. Restoration rhythm. Kael deliberately returned his body toward previous positions, creating movements that looked physically impossible. Null took a fist to the throat. He staggered. Kael smiled. You remember the old me. Null recovered. You are a degraded imitation. No. Kael stepped through a broken corridor. I'm the version who met people you never learned from. That was the difference. Null had ancient memories. Kael had relationships, Lucian's experience. Seraphina's stubbornness. Varka's loyalty, Alindra's control. Cassian's practicality. Even Duke Alaric's refusal to surrender his family. Null had spent thousands of cycles treating people as variables. Kael had finally started treating them as people. And that made him unpredictable, Null screamed. The custodian transformed. Every corridor collapsed into one enormous chamber. At its center floated the machine. The true core, a golden sphere the size of a city. Countless rings rotated around it. Within them burned fragments of timelines. Kael stopped. So did Null. The custodian spoke. Primary cycle deletion at 31%. Kael's blood chilled. Too fast. Null looked toward the core. Continue. Kael shouted. Pause deletion. Conflicting administrator commands detected. Null smiled. Neither of us has full authority. Kael looked at the core. Manual containment override required. Administrator prime authentication required. Null spread his arms. That's you. Kael looked at him. No. Null's smile faded. Kael understood at last. Null had ancient memories. Ancient authority. Ancient hatred. But he was not Administrator Prime. Because Administrator Prime was not a power level. It was an identity. The person who created the original containment order. The person who chose to swallow the devourer. The person who trusted Calum, trusted Lyra. The person who willingly gave up his memories to protect everyone else. Null was the part that rejected that choice. The part that wanted power. The part that believed control mattered more than trust. Kael laughed. Null's expression darkened. What? You aren't the original. Neither are you. Maybe. Kael placed one hand against his chest. The ashen heart beat. But I made the same choice. Null stared. Kael continued. I didn't know who I used to be. Another heartbeat. I didn't remember creating this system. The crown pulsed. I didn't remember the devourer. Kael smiled. And I still chose to protect them. The custodian reacted. Golden symbols ignited around Kael. Null stepped backward. No identity resonance detected. Administrator Prime authentication in progress. Null screamed. No! He attacked. Kael did not defend. Null's blade entered his chest. Exactly where Lucian's sword had killed him in the ballroom. Kael gasped. Blood filled his mouth. Null stared at him. You're still just a disposable side character. Kael grabbed the blade. No. He smiled through blood. That was your script. He pulled himself closer, and I stopped reading it. Authentication complete. The entire custodian went silent. Then every golden ring stopped. Primary cycle deletion suspended. Null froze, lifted his hand. Remove Null's administrator access. The custodian answered, confirmed. Golden symbols vanished from Null's body. For the first time, Kael saw pure fear. No. Null tried to command the machine. Nothing happened. No. Kael pulled the blade from his chest. He dropped to one knee. Blood poured down his shirt. Null backed away. You need me. For what? The Devourer. Kael looked up. You don't know how to control it. Neither do you, True. Null smiled desperately. You need Miles slowly stood. No. You need to know what happened. I'll recover what matters. You'll repeat the same mistakes. Probably. Null stared. Kael's expression softened. But they'll be my mistakes. Null's rage returned. You would throw away eternity for these temporary people? Kael looked toward the suspended fragments of destroyed worlds. Temporary. That was how Null saw everyone. Replaceable. Side characters. Kael understood the irony. The thing he hated most about the novel was exactly how Null treated reality. Kael raised his hand. Open a containment cell. Golden light formed around Null. He attacked the barrier. It held. You can't imprison me forever. Don't need forever. What are you doing? Kael looked at the custodian. Restore access to archived timelines. A pause warning. Full restoration exceeds system capacity. Not restore them. Kael swallowed against the pain. Release their souls into the primary cycle. Null went still. Even the custodian hesitated. Kael continued. Not memories, not bodies. Give them continuation. The machine processed. Archived consciousness can be reintegrated through future births. Kael smiled. Do it, Null screamed. You'll contaminate the cycle. Good. You'll create chaos better than deleting people. The abyss beneath the custodian opened. Countless lights rose. Billions. Trillions. Every consciousness discarded across thousands of failed timelines. Not resurrected. Not forced back into old lives. Freed, given futures. The golden machine shook. Null stared in horror. Kael watched the lights disappear toward the primary world. For the first time, the graveyard of failed realities began to empty. The Devourer stirred. Hunger erupted inside Kael. So much energies. So many worlds. Take them. Kael fell to his knees. Black veins spread across his neck. The crown opened without permission. Null stopped screaming. Then he smiled. There, Kael clenched his teeth. There you are. The Devourer pushed harder. Images flooded Kael's mind. Power beyond comprehension. No loss. No uncertainty. Consume the timelines. Consume the custodian. Consume Null. Consume everything. Become whole. Kael's fingers dug into the floor. Null whispered. The crown expanded. Blackness covered half the chamber. Null laughed. You were always going to become me. Kael's vision blurred. Then he heard a voice, faint. Impossible, Seraphina. The custodian core projected the primary cycle. He saw her standing inside the moonlit sanctuary, Lucian beside her. Varkath, Alindra, Cassian, Darius's father, all alive. Seraphina was shouting toward the projection. She could see him. Kael! The Devourer roared. Seraphina placed one hand against the image. You promised to steal me back. Kael laughed weakly. Then come back too. Null's face twisted. Ignore her. Lucian stepped beside Seraphina. You're not dying before I beat you in a fair fight. Kael coughed. You already lost your blessing. Excuses. Varkath knelt. My king. Kael looked at him. The demon general lowered his head. We followed you once because you were powerful. Then he looked up. We follow you now because you choose us. The crown trembled. Alindra placed her hand beside Seraphina's. Cassian appeared behind them. I refuse to explain to the Emperor that the man who predicted Redhaven died inside a cosmic machine. Even now, Kael laughed. His father pushed forward. Duke Alaric looked furious. Naturally, when you return, you're grounded. I'm 22. I don't care. Darius added. He threw another chair. Of course he did. The Devourer screamed again. But it was weaker. Kael understood the crown was his chain. Not a chain placed upon him. A chain he had created. The Devourer had never been controlled by brute force. It was controlled by identity. By Kael knowing where he ended and hunger began. That was why the Earth life mattered. Null had believed humanity weakened him. It did the opposite. It gave him a self small enough to protect. Kael closed his eyes. I am Kael Veyron. The darkness recoiled. Second son of an angry duke, the crown tightened. Professional thief of hero opportunities. Lucian shouted something offensive. Kael smiled. Occasional terrible planner. Seraphina nodded enthusiastically, and Kael opened his eyes. Gray, not black. I am not hungry. The crown slammed shut. The Devourer vanished beneath his consciousness. Null stared. Kael stood, no. He looked at Null. Choice, the containment cell tightened. You can't erase me. I'm not. Kael walked closer. Null froze. Kael placed one hand against the barrier. So I'm going to do something worse. What? Make you live with everyone you called temporary. The custodian opened a path. A human life. No memories, no administrator privileges, no ancient power. No. Kael smiled. Maybe you'll become less annoying. No, reintegrate Null into the primary cycle. The cell vanished. Null vanished with it. For a moment, Kael stood alone. The custodian spoke. Awaiting Administrator Prime directive, Kael looked at the enormous machine. Thousands of cycles, manipulation, deaths. But also a tool originally created to protect existence. Destroying it would be satisfying. Also stupid. Kael had become mildly less stupid. End all automatic resets confirmed. Remove predetermined role assignment. Confirmed hero. Villain key. Anchor. All of it. Confirmed. Nobody gets assigned a destiny. Confirmed. Kael exhaled. And lock administrator access. Specify authorized entities. Kael smiled. Nobody. Administrator Prime included, especially me. Confirmed. The golden machine dimmed. One final question appeared. Manual containment override requires permanent stabilizer. Kael understood. The Devourer still needed containment, but the old system had relied on resets. Without them, another mechanism was necessary. The ashen heartbeat, the sealed frozen eye. The crimson shadow, 5 remaining fragments. Kael finally understood Elena's warning. Do not consume all 7. He did not need to. They could remain separated. Protected. Not as prison components. As anchors shared across trusted people. Can containment be distributed? The custodian processed. Possible. Kael smiled. Of course it is. Null had always wanted one perfect vessel. One controllable god. Kael would do the opposite. Share the burden. He returned to the primary world. Seraphina hit him before hugging him. Kael staggered. Ow, you pushed me through a portal. I saved you. She hit him again. Stop saving me without asking. Reasonable. Then she kissed him. Kael stopped functioning. Lucian turned away. Varketh smiled. Elindra laughed. Cassian muttered something about finally understanding the kidnapping accusation. When Seraphina stepped back, Kael stared at her. Yes. Yes, Lucian sighed. Remarkable verbal skills. Kael pointed at him. You're still not getting heavenly adaptation back. I know, months passed. The remaining calamities were found. None were consumed. The storm lung went to Varketh's protection. The bone star was sealed beneath Valeria with Elindra. The hollow tongue entered the moonlit sanctuary. The iron dream was guarded by Lucian. The crimson shadow remained with Seraphina. The final fragment, the ashen heart, stayed inside Kael. 7 anchors, no single point of failure. No automatic reset, no predetermined hero, no destined villain. The Demon Empire signed a treaty with Cassian. The Beastmen received control of their rivers. Duke Alaric stopped trying to imprison Kael inside the family estate after Seraphina politely informed him that his son could literally open holes in reality. He still threw chairs. Lucian left the capital. Without heavenly adaptation, without the Abyssal Crown, without destiny pushing treasures into his hands, he became something he had never been allowed to become. He loved it, mostly. He still challenged Kael whenever they met. He usually lost. Kael made sure to mention this frequently. 1 year after the broken cycle began, Blackthorn Academy opened. Kael stood beneath the same mountain where he had stolen the crown. Seraphina stood beside him. Students filled the courtyard. None knew what roles they were supposed to play. Because there were no roles. Some would become heroes, some criminals, some merchants. Some teachers, some would fail. Some would disappear into quiet lives nobody wrote stories about. Kael thought that was beautiful. Seraphina looked at him. What? Nothing, you're smiling. Am I not allowed? You usually smile before doing something illegal. Unfair characterization. She raised an eyebrow. Kael looked toward the academy. In his first remembered life, this world had been a novel. Lucian had been the hero. Seraphina had been the heroine. Kael had been a side character destined to die. He had tried running from the story. Failed, then he tried stealing from it. The hero's strongest power. The heroine's affection, secret treasures, future opportunities. Eventually, he realized the most valuable thing he could steal was not power, it was ownership. The right to decide what happened next. Seraphina took his hand. Kael smiled. Several. Terrible ones, probably. She sighed. They walked toward the academy together. Far away somewhere in the Empire, a child was born beneath an ordinary sky. The baby had black hair, gray eyes. No memories. His mother held him and gave him a name that had nothing to do with gods, cycles, or destiny. Kael would never know which child contained the soul that had once been null. That was intentional. Everyone deserved at least one life where the story had not already decided what they would become. Even him, especially him. Above the world, the custodian remained silent. No golden eye opened, no hidden hand corrected fate, no reset waited behind failure. For the first time in thousands of cycles, tomorrow was unknown. Kael looked toward the sunrise. Once he had feared the future because he knew exactly how he was supposed to die. Now he smiled because he had absolutely no idea what would happen. And that was the strongest power he had ever stolen.